The storyline coming into tonight's race is the fact that it is the last opportunity for us to set the stage for how next weekend's championship finale at the Hickory Motor Speedway is going to look. Only the top three in championship points at night's end will have an opportunity to lay claim to the 2021 Smart Modified Tour title. Now, coming into the night, that top three in points is separated by only two markers. Burt Myers, who is our precision-built Spindle Quick Time Award winner earlier on in the night, second time that he was able to capture honors of that nature on the season. Burt Myers ended up coming into the night with the championship points lead. However, that's despite the fact he's yet to find victory lane. Burt will be the first one to tell you that he races for wins and he wants the points to fall where they may. If he wants to make a statement as far as locking himself into that championship contention come next week, going out and winning here tonight would certainly make a pretty loud bang. Now, second championship points is one of the interesting stories that we've had all year. It's a driver who's won a race already. In fact, it was at Franklin County. So this area, or this part of the country, in terms of racing venues, has been very good to that of John Smith. And he's two markers out of the championship point lead, tied for that second spot with Jason Myers, who is third. First with the tiebreaker there is the fact that John Smith has won a race already in the season, while Jason Myers has yet to find victory lane. The field's going to come into formation on the front straightaway, and we will feel the power of these massive and mammoth machines. And once we have them lined up on the front stretch, we move into our command. Now, this is a venue that a lot of people have been looking forward to. We mentioned the fact that this race is represented by Stanley Law Group, and of course, Virginia Senator Bill Stanley in the house. Got to talk to him earlier before we kicked off our feature events, and boy, has he and his team been doing a lot for this area, a lot for motorsports. There's so much more to come, and his partnership has allowed us to develop another storyline as far as a bit of another kick or an addition of star power to the Smart Modified Series for this season. Hermie Sadler, who rolls off the number 17 for PSR Products and Racing, is going to stage on the main straightaway. This is Hermie's Tour-Type Modified debut. As a matter of fact, when he hung up the helmet for the most part, we saw him in action working the pit lane for Fox Sports, and he's kept himself in the mix in the motorsports community. Of course, brother Elliott Sadler, longtime NASCAR Cup Series driver and winner there as well. Hermie, too, though, with two Xfinity wins, his racing resume, 1993 NASCAR Rookie of the Year. And with the partnership presented with Senator Bill Stanley, Hermie is here tonight, and he's honestly been quite solid. Qualifying may not have gone the way in which they'd exactly hoped for, but considering the fact that, Hermie's not been, been in a car of this nature, that being a Tour-Type Modified, it's certainly turning some heads to see how well he's been able to perform throughout the various practice sessions, and even with a pretty decent run in qualifying as well. So Felix can come up on the main straightaway. Once we have our last couple of cars in place, we'll go through the starting lineup and give the men to fire the engines here at Motor Mile. This was by far the largest field of Smart Modifieds that we have had for a race so far in 2021. 28 cars on the entry blank. 27 took part in qualifying. The one that didn't was that of Chris Fleming in the number 13, and I'm happy to report that that car is in fact pretty much on the ready and stationed to try to roll off here. We'll see if Chris is going to be able to make the start. We spoke with son Luke Fleming, who's actually in Uncle Frank's 40 car tonight. If you want to learn more about Luke and his racing ventures and that organization and how that deal came to be, head on over to the Smart Modified Facebook page, and Ian Kyle and Visualize Media, who's been doing a phenomenal job in helping set up the promotional elements of these races, went into an in-depth storyline and discussion with Luke on how he returned back to the cockpit of a Tour-Type Modified, how things have been going, what he's been doing in the meantime, and how excited he is to be here tonight here at the Mile Speedway. Last couple of cars are set to roll off. Now, qualifying did not necessarily go off without a hitch. We did have a couple of things that took place, one of which was that one of the Hillbilly Motorsports cars, in fact, they came with two vehicles, James Savali in the traditional number 79, but there will be a 179 in the field. That is Paul Hall. It's a red car with pink wheels, a little one shoved behind the 7 and 9 there on the side of that car. Paul actually had a left rear tire that got in qualifying, made contact with the outside retaining wall coming off turn 4, and that forced that team to do a little bit of damage control, but not too much. However, Paul, who really worked hard to be able to be here tonight and put this deal together with that team that he's been supporting throughout most of the season, he's going to be able to come out here and make his first smart start and his first start of the season in this Tour Type Modified. As you mentioned, 28 cars in total, so getting them all lined up and situated is something that is taking a little bit of time here as the last few cars make their way out. I have yet to see Chris Fleming's car roll from the pit lane, so it is perhaps possible that he will not be able to make the call. We'll keep our eyes on that one. A few cars working their way into position here on the front straightaway, and we've developed a pretty unique smart modified tradition so far in all of our races, and we're going to extend that to this incredible crowd that is in place here tonight at Motor Mile. This is a track that I personally have watched a lot of racing at over the last few years. Of course, back when the Pro Cup Series ran here, Cars Late Model Tour events here, and even Modifieds have run here under a number of different banners, and a handful of drivers in tonight's field have not only competed here before in other touring type events, but also have won here. So we'll tell you more about that as the night unfolds. And the good news for all of you Chris Fleming fans is that that car did in fact roll off the pit lane, and he will make the start of tonight's race. And that means we are in fact going to have 28 cars. Everybody who came out tonight to show support for this series, this track, and you fans is going to take the green flag here tonight. As the last car comes into position there off of turn number 4. We'll have the final few cars kill the power to these 600 horsepower machines. And now I want to turn it over to all of you incredible fans here at the Mile Speedway. I will pose you the simple question. Are you ready for tonight's Smart Modified Stanley Law Group Stand with Small Business 99 presented by Smart Chevrolet? You guys ready? Come on, you guys can do a little bit better than that. How about a scream for these 600 horsepower machines? You guys ready to go racing? That's more like it. I'm going to call on every single one of you to say the most famous words in motorsports to get these engines fired. We're going to count down from 3. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. You gotta love that sound. 28 cars strong. Firing it up here. That means we've got a long list of drivers to introduce to you who are with us here on watching on Speed 51 TV. Here's the starting lineup for tonight. As we mentioned, Stanley Law Group stands with Small Business 99, presented by Smart Chevrolet. Connected driver Max Zachary. Qualifying in the top 5, he's here on pole. He'll start alongside New York native Crispin Florio on the outside of row 1. Jason Myers holding on to that final spot to get in the championship showdown next week in victory. He's going to start calling for a third outside corner to walk to. He's looking for a win. He's fourth in the championship standings, and he's been fast so far this weekend. Front Myers, the championship point singer, fastest in qualifying, 3-2-5. Car 1 coming from the inside of row 3. While Richard Ward is back. Surprise, surprise. These two meet each other the other day after a couple of on-track skirmishes, and they end up lining up side by side here in row 3. James Savali back behind the wheel of his car. Devon McCarty getting the seat warm last week. 79 for Hillbilly Motorsports and 7. Outside Virginia native, former track champion here at Motor Mile. Dennis Holmgren going to start in 8th spot. Bob McCarty, two-time winner. He does have a mathematical shot at trying to get into that top 3. He's going to roll and put that 25 to the inside of row 5. Outside is the youngster, Taylor Henry, already has 1 win to his credit for 2021. And Tommy Ball races on the 7 and 1 from 10th spot tonight for green. 11th position, Tom Buzzing, fresh off his first Smart Modified top 5 last time out of Canadian. Outside is scheduled to be that of Jonathan Brown in 24. However, he is running at the back of the field right now. We'll see what's up there with one of our winners of the season. The Barriero's car is supposed to walk outside of 07. Luke Franklin, we talked to you about it earlier, driving up with Franks in the 40 to 15 outside Virginia native Bernie Sadler, making his one modified debut. The PSR number 17 and 16 spot. John Smith, second in points, Franklin County winner, coming all the way from 17th spot. And the General Jones number 19 outside Jimmy Wallace in car 22 and 18. 19 is where they're caught by Corbin, into the car number 12, outside Daniel Yates, whose Uncle Tom is launching t-shirts in the crowd earlier. They gave us some fun into starting 20th. 21st, getting the Jet Tornado, 1990. Will modify to a champion. In 21st spot, outside Rusty Scooters in the second. Bargelli on number 07 in 22nd. The 179 of Paul Hall, winning this swap in the year, got in 23rd. Troy Young, another newcomer to the swap tour, 24th spot, 02. Rob Miller in the 76th will start 25th. Outside will be Bugsy Beaton to the 41. Rounding out on the outside will be Greg Jones, 03. And Paul 13 of Chris Fleming. That is how they're going to come down for the start of this race. A Smarty Trophy from Justin's on the line. A shot at the championship. Even the top 3 points when all said and done. And the opportunity to lay claim to a victory here in a packed house, packed field, and we're ready to go. Max Zappa and Chris Pinatrario bring us down at the start of the race. And Pinatrario being a little bit too eager to get going on that one here as he left Max Zacco as they came into the Fathead start and restart zone, and a quick decision made by race director Chris Williams. And we're going to have to reroute the field and try that once more. We'll be paying attention to that start and restart zone. However, I believe we have to start this race to get things going, and Zacco was not ready to fire, and Pinatrario was. He's a big creative pace laps, so give us an opportunity to remind all of our viewers that there's a couple of different Ravens who spot modified races if you haven't seen it before. One of which is the fact we have a very hot Super Center stage break at lap 30. That's when you see the orange and white checkered flag. $300 to go to the driver who won at the time, $200 to the second place winner, and $100 to the driver who comes home in third, courtesy of one of our premier partners in 2021 in Jerry Super Center. The other element, which is really going to be important as this track is somewhat changed over the last few years, is going to be that one single time. This is a hot pit lane. We're going to see live action pit stops here where positions can change and shuffle up, and they're going to be utilizing the backstretch pit area as well. It's just like Bristol. They'll enter off turn 2 and route into the racetrack going into turn 1. We'll do our best to keep tabs on who's doing what when those pit stops take place. Let's try it again, shall we? Smart Chevrolet pit truck can make its way out in the pit lane off turn 4. We'll try it here, take 2. Max Zacco and Chris Pinatrario. Bring us down to the start. And it's a much better race for Max Zacco. He's putting 2 to the lead. Pinatrario drives and he can turn through like a double run to third on head. As they come off turn 4, Lofton and Jason Myers still side by side for third spot. And Brian Lofton is starting to prove quite early that that outside line is there tonight for these tour-type modifieds. He's making it work and trying to work his way outside of Pinatrario for second. Boy, Dennis Holgren got way up the racetrack off turn 4, nearly caught the wall as the leader rockets off turn 2 and down the backstretch. Lofton is able to take third away at the exit of turn 2. Meanwhile, Buzzy Beavers in the family-owned and operated number 41 pulls aside on the main straightaway, will let the leaders go by, and maybe a short night for Beavers as he's heading for the pit lane. Lofton's not done yet. He is working the backside of Finichario for second, while Zackham starts to break free. Zackham holding about a 10-car length advantage as they hit the end of the back straightaway. Finichario leaves the bottom lane open just enough for Brian Lofton to have a peek to the inside. He made the outside work to get by Myers. Now trying the bottom shot here on Finichario as they almost come together in one. Lofton on the inside. Finichario up top. Jason Myers watching as they both run wide off 4. But Finichario really trying to pin Lofton down to break his momentum coming off the corner to give himself a fighting chance to hold on to the runner-up spot. While Max Zackham is about to have some pretty heavy lap traffic up in front of him early on in this race. Buzzy Beavers rejoins the field on the back straightaway, and it's going to be 3 wide for third spot. With Beavers on the bottom, Myers squirts out in front and takes third away from Finichario. And boy, things really starting to accordion back together there at that point of the racetrack. Finichario, Burt Myers, Brandon Ward, Savali, Labani all kind of knotted together on the backstretch in turn 3. First side-by-side battle we got going on right now is Bobby Labani inside of Savali. Off of turn 2, Labani will take that spot away. And lap traffic is really about to start being a factor here. First car moves way wide down to the inside. That was the 0-3 machine of Craig Young, who yielded to the leaders. Now Lofton up in that second lane has to try to get through, as there are cars quite literally wrapped all the way around this 0.4 of a mile oval here in Radford, Virginia. And Max Zackham is putting on a clinic at the front. We're halfway to that Jerry Hunt Supercenter stage break. Next time by, we'll have completed lap number 15. That caution will come out at lap 30. Zackham leading at the front of the pack. Here comes the points leader, Burt Myers, looking to get a spot away from Finichario in turn 1. Finichario's car just not quite handling to the best that he would hope for at this point in the race. Not sure if he's trying to save some tires for the end, but he's starting to bottleneck. Not only Myers, but Brandon Ward is looking high and low. Bobby Labani tucked in behind. Tom Buzzy's working his way forward, as is that of Jeremy Gerstner with the 55. Trouble! Gerstner spins in turn 1. Gerstner was in that pack. I believe they were working their way around the lap car at that point of Craig Young. And Gerstner goes for a slide, and Gary Putnam is also involved. And while Gerstner has been able to drive away, see Craig Young yielding up towards the top of the racetrack here. Gerstner's going to pull up to him off turn 4 and try to make his way back up in at least towards the position in which he was running. But Gary Putnam's car is rolling gingerly down the banking in turns 1 and 2. And this first caution coming out here, 17 laps in. As we mentioned, that stage break is coming at the lap 30 mark. So Putnam is finally able to get that car rolling. Gerstner is also in a bit of a hurry here to perhaps get up there, and he's going to pull up alongside of Putnam and perhaps express a little bit of displeasure as these two are going toe-to-toe on the front stretch. Luke Fleming and Jimmy Wallace have a front row seat to it all. Of course, Gary Putnam was able to take home, or at least take advantage of the first opportunity to win that Smarty Trophy. And I oftentimes when we have these races here, it's really hard to describe the nature of that trophy. You just got to see it for yourself. So if you got some free time, head on over to our social media accounts, or you'll see it a little bit later on tonight as far as how it is truly meant to embody all of the physical characteristics of some of the modified drivers who truly paved the way for this style of racing, especially down here in these parts of the country. You see a little bit of every driver in that figure and that trophy. Bobby Labani said it's just like an NHRA Wally. He's pretty spot on with that there, with the ideology and the thought process that Chris Williams and our partners at Jostens were able to come up with in terms of that piece of hardware. And it's just a little bit of extra motivation to try to go out there and best a field of this caliber as we see pit stops taking place here. This is going to be the first time that we've got some pit stop action under this first yellow. Tom Buzzy and James Savali, the first two, to take advantage of the pit lane being open. And even if they are pitting on the front straightaway, they enter on the backstretch. They're not allowed to blend up above that second line. It's actually a white line there. So you see Buzzy and Savali on the apron of the racetrack. That's fair game for when they come through turns 3 and 4 under pacing speed for their pit stop. And we'll try to see what each of these teams are going to do. And ironically, they're going to be parked not too far away from one another, with Savali's Hillbilly Motorsports team working on the backside of his number 79, and Tom Buzzy is making a couple of adjustments to the left rear of that number 5. And again, these drivers and teams only have at their disposal one sticker tire in terms of a fresh rubber they're going to be able to put on as Gary Putnam and Brian Weber come down the second time through. And we see the work continuing on Savali and Buzzy's entries, and that strategy element as far as what tire you're going to put on, whether it be the right rear or the right front, and when you're going to come down and do it, if you're going to have enough time to get back up through the pack. It's really been one of the reasons why we've had 7 different winners in the first 9 races of this season. So far, though, not seeing anybody elect to put on that new tire just yet. And for obvious reasons, we're going to see that yellow at lap 30. And then again, with a field of this size and this caliber and a track that is this racy. And for those of you watching along on Speed 51 TV, I personally have never been to Motor Mile before. This is my first time being here, but I remember, as I said, watching a number of these races, whether it be on television or streaming platforms. And even back in the day when you could jump on this track on some of the video games that were out and such. And I mean, sometimes the screens just don't do the justice. The 15 degrees of banking on each side of the racetrack and the 7 degrees of banking on the front and back stretch, and just the facility with the drag strip behind the back straightaway kind of runs parallel to that of the back stretch, and the way in which the stands are built so you can kind of look down really reminds me of home back at Walt Stadium Speedway. This is certainly one of the best, raciest venues that we've had a chance to visit in 2021, and track management and the supporting staff have been absolutely phenomenal. They've left the door open for us on a number of occasions, do whatever we need to do to put a race of this caliber on, and the support races tonight have been phenomenal as well. There's more racing to come, whether you're here with us or watching on Speed 51 TV, and I don't think that this Smart Modify race is going to be the only time that we see fireworks. The CitraSafe Choose Cone makes its first appearance of the night. Chris Honeycutt lays it out on the start-finish line, and that is similar to most Choose Cones you would see. Ours is done up in a unique fashion. Also is able to give a shout-out to CitraSafe for their involvement and support of the Smart Modify Tour in 2021. And we see Max Zackham elect the inside lane, but Brian Lofton has proven on a couple of occasions he could make passes high, he could make passes low. What could he do on the outside of row 1? Smart Chevrolet Pace Truck's going to come down and receive the one-to-go signal this time. Going to be the first time that we also have a chance to check out the Fatheads Eyewear Restart Zone, where they're passing there off of turn 4. And Fatheads Eyewear, now not only do they sponsor our Restart Zone, but they have jumped in a big way in terms of smart modified support and support for those of you who may be looking for some new eyewear. In fact, if you head on over to their website, select Fatheads Eyewear, they got a promo code running, SMART, just the word SMART, at checkout, to save 40%. That's 40% off your next purchase for Fatheads Eyewear. That's Fatheads, proud sponsor of the Fatheads Restart Zone for the Smart Modified Tour in 2021. Here's how they're going to look coming to that Fatheads Restart Zone. Max Zackham, Brian Lofton, Jason and Burt Myers, Vinichario, Brandon Ward, your first 3 rows. Here we go, back underway from Motor Mile. How about Burt being able to find a way to get down there behind brother Jason on the restart? Cleared Vinichario, now runs in 4th spot, while Brandon Ward is trying to make the top side work here on Vinichario all 4. Zackham still leads. Zackham able to keep Brian Lofton at bay. Was talking to Max a little bit earlier tonight and said, obviously, the tire rule, a little bit different than some of the races you may have run so far this season. Actually credited that as one of the reasons why they elected to come down and make the trip. And he said that they scratched their heads coming down here as far as what they were going to do. He didn't quite disclose their plan. But nevertheless, this race appears to be just as Max and his team planned on it, as he leads another lap at the stripe. Lofton about a car length back while Jason Myers is under fire, not only from brother, but for fellow combatant in that top 3 in the championship. Points leader Burt Myers looking low as they come out of turn 4. Remember, Burt was the fastest car in qualifying earlier today. He was able to lay down a bit of a flyer in terms of capturing that Precision Built Spindle Quick Time Award. Started 5th in this race, is now moved up to 3rd, and is working the backside of the Shady Gray Racing number 15 of Brian Lofton for 2nd. And all the while, we're about to see some lap traffic yet again. Buzzy Bieber's just in front of the leader, and a little bit of smoke trailing out of Luke Fleming's number 40 as he comes out of 4. There may be something amiss on the driver who made his return to tour-type modified competition. Fleming now with more smoke out of the left side, and he's going to pull down. What a heartbreaker for Luke Fleming, who was off the pace on the back straightaway. So Luke will bring Uncle Frank's number 40 car down to the attention of his crew while the leader, Max Zackham, makes his way down the backstretch. Bobby Labonte inside of Finichario for 5th and 3. Labonte trying to use that apron of the racetrack to help that car corner a little bit off the turn, but Finichario's holding him tight. And Finichario so far able to keep Labonte at bay for the time being. He runs up wide here in 3 and 4, and we're about 5 laps away from the Jerry Hunt Supercenter stage break. Leader's about to come on the back of Craig Young and Troy Young, one of which yields to the leaders. The other one runs in a little bit high here off the corner. Zackham is going to squeeze by. And now Troy Young is going to kind of bottleneck up that inside lane on Labonte. He washes up the racetrack, nearly caught the 2000 Cup champion as he went by. As Zackham comes to put another lap on the board. Top 3 pretty well settled out. In fact, make that the top 4. Jason Myers in sole possession. Got a car in trouble in front of the pack. Hang on. That is one of the Youngs who has jumped out sideways there after being swallowed up by the front 4. And that car went around in a big way and nearly took a couple of the front runners with him. That's Craig Young, I believe, who went for that semi-slide. And that car almost hooked back up in front of traffic. And it will slow the field a couple laps shy of the stage break. Well, that was definitely a catch-your-breath moment when that car hooked back to the right. And it is, in fact, the 03 of Craig Young, who gave everybody from about 5th on back a bit of a scare there after that sliding save. Craig Young, Troy Young, newcomers to the Smart Modified Tour. At this point in the season, they've got a long resume in terms of racing experience. Virginia natives in their own right. Actually had a chance to catch up with them in one of our races earlier in the season. I believe it was at Franklin County. And with the help and support of Foxfire Towing and Scott's Towing, they brought 2 flatbeds, 2 race cars. They got themselves some new chassis, some new motors as well, and power plants to kind of come on out here. And they've been instructed to get as much lap time and track time as they can, so that way they're prepared for the competitive nature of these Smart Modify races and these fields. And I mean, just take a look at our field right now. We have former NASCAR champion and Hall of Famer, former NASCAR Rookie of the Year, Xfinity Series winners, and modified champions in their own right, and drivers who have double-digit track championships, some of the most difficult and toughest places to accomplish these things. So strap into a car, come on out here. Time, you know, within reason to some of those who are fastest in qualifying, and then just try to log all the laps, stay out of harm's way. It can be a tall order for someone who's new to this style of racing, especially on a track like that of Motor Mile, as the pit lane is now open, and we see Jonathan Brown down for a stop. James Savali and Tom Buzzy coming back in for the second time under the second yellow. So they're going to try to get some additional service done on that stop. And I'll tell you, for Jonathan Brown, this is starting to look very similar to when he went out and captured victory at our 3rd race at Caraway. At the beginning of the race, that car was awful. You would be one to admit it. They were thrashing on the handle of it. When it came down to that all-important pit stop and putting on that new Hoosier tire, Brown was able to move up through the field with relative ease. Restarted up towards the front of the pack, made a pass for the lead, and never looked back. And that's one of the reasons why this Buddy Ellis zone number 24 that has been driven by not only Jonathan Brown, not only by John Smith, but also by Danny Bone, Bone, in fact, was able to capture a top 10 finish in the truck race today at Talladega. So a great run for him. And if the schedule allows, I'm sure we may see Bone back in competition before the season is over. This caution extended a little bit here as now Chris Fleming joins the party on the pit lane and is also going to allow us a chance to kind of open up the discussion about the upcoming North-South shootout. Max Zackham was explaining that it wasn't originally their intended plan to come down here and race, but they shuffled up plans a little bit, and they've got their eyes on that North-South shootout that's going to be happening in just about a month from now, as a matter of fact, a little more than a month from now. November 6th at Caraway Speedway. This is the 19th annual John Blewett Memorial North-South Shootout, and we've already had a number of qualifying events. This race tonight is a North-South Shootout qualifier, so for Max Zackham and his team, boy, would this go a long way, knowing that if they wanted to make the trip down from Connecticut to partake in that event, if they're able to hold on and win here tonight, they would be able to secure a spot, a guaranteed spot in that field if he's able to hold on for the remainder of this race. Drivers were already locked in. Matt Hirschman, by virtue of his win at Star Speedway. Jonathan Brown, after capturing the season finale at Bowman Gray. Bobby Labonte finished second to Brown at Caraway in the Smart Modify race, so he was able to pick up the qualifier there. Burt Myers was runner-up to one of the drivers who already went to victory lane in Hirschman at Dominion, so he's got his spot. So the question now becomes, who's going to take home the top honors here? $50,000 in purse and bonus money up for grabs. There's been additional cash prizes and incentives to the top three drivers on lap 76 of any North-South Shootout qualifier. They've been splitting a $500 cash bonus, $250 to the leader, $150 for the second place runner, and the third place driver gets $100 there. They also have another $2,000 posted for the lap 76 bonus in the North-South Shootout in November. And they also have additional driving rewards and contingency prizes that are up for grabs. It's one of our favorite races of the year. I never got a chance to come down when I was still living up in the northeast quadrant of the country. Never had a chance to come down and see it at Concord, but Caraway's been doing an amazing job as far as hosting that race and that event. Obviously, Hickory had it a couple years back, and excited to see, based on the three races we've had with the Smart Modifieds in 2021 at Caraway, really excited to see how this one's going to shake down. It's certainly going to be one you don't want to miss. Again, the North-South Shootout, the 19th annual John Blewett Memorial North-South Shootout, November 6th at Caraway. For more information, check out Caraway's website and social media outlets. Well, unfortunately, it looks like we may have a bit of a situation on the racetrack in terms of fluid. The field is being stopped on the back straightaway, and the hard-working crew here at Motor Mile is now working the bottom side of turns 3 and 4 to try to clean up whatever fluid may have been dropped quite well in the racing groove. We see it there just off the bottom of that white line that transitions from the banking down to the apron of the racetrack. And we did see a little bit of smoke come out of Luke Fleming's car, so that could have been one of the reasons as to why we saw some misfortune there. And that's very unfortunate for Luke. He was very happy to be out here and back in competition. So it looks as though that their night is done. We see that car positioned towards his trailer. Luke's already on top of the hauler, as a matter of fact, and he's going to be watching the rest of this one with us. But he had his family here with him tonight. Was super excited to be back in competition. And as I mentioned earlier, if you want to learn more about Luke, just head on over to the Smart Modified Facebook page. Beautiful, beautiful job by Ian Kyle and Visualize Media to kind of tell Luke's story. And it's quite remarkable what he was able to accomplish as a rookie at the Madhouse, at Bowman Gray Stadium, and able to parlay that into some success with his touring modified duties, and has been having a little bit of fun on the dirt track side as well over the last year or so. And hopefully we see Luke back out here for more races, because he certainly deserves to be out there for much more than just about 27 laps. So the track crew doing their due diligence here on the front stretch. Let's take this opportunity to shout out another one of our premier partners that we have here on the Smart Modified Tour, and it's been one of the reasons why I believe that this series has been able to take off in the fashion in which it has. And we've had so many people who have been able to come out in a big way. In just a couple laps or so, we're going to see the Jerry Hunt Supercenter stage break come to a close. It's one of the reasons why our chief starter in J.B. Cole, the wrestling flagman, as some of you may know him as, and actually they had a couple of T-shirts of his that were going out to a number of fans here earlier with the T-shirt cannon. But Jerry Hunt Supercenter has been a longtime supporter not only of select drivers and teams throughout the years, but they jumped on board in a very big way with the Smart Modified Tour in 2021.
Now, if you're looking for a premier North Carolina dealer with a huge selection of used and certified vehicles, then you need to check out Jerry Hunt Supercenter. Visit their website, jerryhuntsupercenter.com, or stop by their Greensboro dealership located in Lexington, North Carolina. That's Jerry Hunt Supercenter. We buy more, we sell more, you save more. Well, the unfortunate element of this delay here as the field continues to be stopped on the back straightaway is it appears as though the amount of fluid that was dropped around the racetrack is quite considerable. In fact, we're going to see them work even more speedy dry down in those areas, and that may give us a bit of an indication that we could be a short while away from getting this one back underway, but that does open up the opportunity for us to talk about the championship. I said on the lead-in to the broadcast tonight and to our event here at Motor Mile that the top three drivers were separated by just 2 points. Well, the way the Smart Modified Tour works, it's kind of a hybrid of some of the way in which we're seeing some of the big league stock car series crown their champions, and but also we have a model that is meant to award or reward consistency. So when the drivers come to the end of these Smart Modify races, drivers who end up finishing up in the top 5 positions, they're actually awarded championship points. So it's a separate tally that will come into play in next week's season finale. But the gist of it is that you have to be in the top 3 in the standings once the checkered flag flies tonight. And the Stanley Law Group stands with Small Business 99, presented by Smart Chevrolet, in order for you to have a shot at that title. That is a bunch of different scenarios as far as how things look coming into tonight's race. We mentioned that the top 3 were separated by just 2 points. Well, Burt Myers is fortunate that by being the points leader and pretty much about 13 markers above the cut line, which is 4th position, he really only has to finish at least 8th place or better in order to clinch himself an opportunity to try to win that championship. So that's a number that Burt, of course, is keeping in the back of his head. But as we've said many a time so far tonight, he's someone who doesn't appear to really care about how the championship card falls. He wants to grab a Smart Modify win, and judging by his driving here tonight, he's backing that up. He's been steadily moving his way up towards the front of the field, and it's been fun to watch. Not really sure about the idea of Burt Myers points racing, but for those of you who are cheering him on tonight, the magic number, regardless of what the competition does, is 8th or better for Burt to assure himself a shot at the championship. Now, with John Smith, he's 11 markers above that cut line, so he has the tiebreaker due to the fact that he won at Franklin County. He pretty much needs a 7th place finish or better, but Smith and that team have been working hard to get that thing handling right. Did not qualify the way in which he hoped for. He was actually all the way down to the running order when things came to fruition there at the green flag, and for Smith, he's currently trying to work his way further forward. He's, in fact, running in 10th position right now, and he would need a few more spots to kind of control his own destiny. 7th or better is what Smith is looking for in order for him to assure himself a shot at the championship next week at Hickory. Now, Jason Myers in a similar position there, but because of the fact that Smith has the tiebreaker, Jason would need to finish about 6th or better in order to assure himself an opportunity at running for that title. Now, when we get down to Brian Lofton, Bobby Labonte, and Jeremy Gerstner, it's a little bit more complex because it does kind of hinge on the performance of the competition. But if you want a full breakdown of how some of these scenarios could take place, I want to credit everybody at the Smart Modified Tour. Our social media channels are just filled with information for you to be able to absorb at your own convenience, and there is a deeply detailed championship points breakdown available for you to be able to consume there and kind of help set yourself up for our season finale, our points-paying season finale, I should say, at Hickory Motor Speedway 1 week from tonight. And if you can't be there, of course, you'll be able to catch out that race on speed51.tv as well. So under the red flag here right now, 27 laps complete. 30 laps is the mark in which we're going to see the orange and white checkered flag fall for the Jerry Hunt Supercenter stage break. But a bit of an oil down, and the racing groove has paused the field. Max Zackham still leading after starting on pole. Brian Lofton trying to race his way into that championship fight sits second. second. Burt Myers, the point leader, in third. Jason Myers doing exactly what he needs to do here tonight, running in fourth. And Chris Finichario, your top five. Well, the last race that we have at the Smart Modified Tour was at Dominion Raceway, and a familiar name ended up kind of sweeping the night. The term that I was able to use was that he's been batting 1,000 in Smart Modified Tour competition, but he's also been doing pretty darn good with any other race that he competes in, and that, of course, is Matt Hirschman. I have to report that Matt may not be with us tonight, but he was in competition. In fact, he picked up a win up at Mahoning Valley tonight. That was his 20th win of the season, and he did so after adding an addition to his family. He and his wife welcomed the birth of their new child just a couple days ago, and Violet Hirschman. So congratulations to Matt on more than one occasion there for the big win off track with the extension of the family, and, of course, the win on track as well. And Matt is someone who said that he is really looking forward to that North-South shootout that's going to be coming up on November 6th. He really wants to kind of hone in there and see if he could take home that title and those honors as well. And he wasn't quite sure how the rest of his racing schedule was going to kind of fill. We mentioned that our points-paying finale is next week at Hickory, but we have two more special events underneath the Smart banner for 2021. October 23rd, Mile Speedway. That one is shaping up to be a true home run. I was looking at the schedule early. Looks like we're going to have a bit of an earlier start time there for that one on October 23rd. And then slated to be a part of the South Carolina 400 with a return trip to Florence Motor Speedway November 19th and 20th. Again, the best way to stay up to speed as to all that is happening is by visiting the Smart Modified Tour social media outlets. Website is in development. It is, in fact, upcoming. We will have a newly rebranded, designed, and developed website in the works as well. And we got a lot of amazing people doing incredible things behind the scenes to keep the spotlight on this tour. And tonight is just truly visual evidence as to all that hard work is kind of starting to transition and formulate into a lot of success for this style of racing, which a lot of us, if we're from the Northeast, or even if you're from this part of the country, you know, modified racing was born in this area. It became incredibly dominant and popular up in, you know, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and down here, it's, of course, Bowman Gray Stadium just hits it out of the park each and every time, but to have a traveling tour type modified series and have the level of support that we've had, not only from the competitors and the teams, but also from the fan support. I see so many people in the grandstands here at Motor Mile who are adorning Smart Modified shirts, which either indicates that you came out here tonight and picked one up right away and had to just wear it for tonight's event, or that we've seen you before, whether it be at our other Virginia tracks at Franklin County, South Boston, or even the fact that you're just such a huge supporter. You're following us wherever we may go. On behalf of everybody at the Smart Modified Tour, we appreciate that level of support, and it is an absolute honor and dream come true to be part of this on the ground level in which we started. And everybody from Chris Williams and J.B. Cole and Chris Honeycutt, who's driving our pace truck, Justin Mincy, who has been doing an incredible job with a lot of our stats and information and pre- and post-race lineups and everything that we need to know to come to these races prepared. And there's a lot of other people behind the scenes, from our tech officials and people who handle scoring. And there's just so many collaborations and partnerships that make a series like this run as efficiently as the Smart Modified Tour has this year, and we're hopeful that that trend will continue. We'll remind everybody, if you're watching with us on Speed 51 TV, caution came out due to a spin in turns 3 and 4 by Craig Young, and underneath that caution, we discovered some fluid around the racetrack, and the track crew here at Motor Mile is getting themselves situated with the right elements to try to get the track back into a race-ready condition. Unfortunately for you here at Motor Mile, that means I've kind of got to fill some airtime on Speed 51, so thus the reason for not sitting back and relax. But it's a great time to head over to the refreshment stand if you want to grab yourself a cold beverage or perhaps a bite to eat. This track, as soon as we walked in, that was one of the first things that I noticed here about Motor Mile, one of which was the voice of Joey Self, who it's an absolute pleasure to be able to sharing a microphone with someone of his caliber and nature. Pretty much every track in Virginia has had Joey Self in its broadcast booth in some capacity, and of course he's a frequent voice on the public address announcing systems at Martinsville and Richmond Raceway, and Joey is one of the most class act guys. I'm happy to finally have a face to put to the name, and more than honored to be sharing the microphone with him tonight here at Motor Mile, as well as what we have going on at Speed 51 TV. So it's a huge personal honor for me. And I got to tell you, a lot of people throughout the motorsports community have been enduring a lot of loss as of late for a number of reasons. And I want to take this opportunity to thank someone and remember someone who meant a lot to me in my racing career. And I came from Mile Speedway. I was up there announcing for about 7 or so years before my now wife and I elected to move south. And Bob Menschner was the track chaplain. He was with Racing with Jesus Ministries. He was always a part of our weekly duties and invocation. He also worked maintenance there at Mile Speedway, and he would travel every bit that he could. A number of those racetracks up there, whether it be Mahoning Valley or the now Evergreen Raceway, Bob was a fixture, and he was never in a bad mood. And I told this story in memoriam of Bob, who we lost about a week ago. When I elected to move south, about a couple of years prior, Bob came up to me and just posed the question, "Hey, I need your address." And he did not provide any context as to why. And when I looked at him, without hesitation, I gave it to him, and he said, "I wanted to add you to my Christmas card list." And after we moved, he made it a point to reach out to me and get my new address, and he's made sure to send a Christmas card to everyone who meant something to him each and every year. Bob, we're going to miss the Christmas cards, and we are going to miss you. And I hope that you're having the best seat in the house to be a part of this racing action. We all know how much you love motorsports, modified racing especially, and we're truly going to miss you, my friend. And I'm remembering Bob Menschner tonight here. We'll have the opportunity to sit atop this racetrack and really have the privilege to be a part of these races here at Motor Mile tonight. Take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about some of the history of modified racing. I mentioned Justin Mincy earlier as one of our premier partners who does so much for the Smart Modified Tour as far as lead-ins and statistical packets and information. I'll consider this to be one of my Justin Mincy facts of the race. In 8 previous starts, the Smart Modified Tour has had 7 different winners, with the only repeat winner here at Motor Mile being that of Jay Hedgecock. Now, Jay did that in a span of over a decade. He won here in 1990 and in 2001. And joining him as a former winner was 3 legends of that of modified racing in Tony Jankowiak, Ed Flemke Jr., and Junior Miller. Now, the Tour hasn't been here since 2004. Obviously, it's undergone some different change in ownerships, and it ran here under what was then the Wheel and Southern Modified Tour. But back then, it was, of course, known as New River Valley Speedway, and then converted over to Motor Mile Speedway. Now, we told you about the young brothers who were in the field. Unfortunately for Craig, one of the reasons for that most recent caution, but to kind of expand upon that storyline, they both raced karts in the World Karting Association platform for about 10 to 15 years or so, and then they ran in some of the lower divisions at Franklin County. Well, that was where I had a chance to catch up with one of them, and they were just hooked by the sensation of these cars. We mentioned some new chassis. Well, they went to Fury Race Cars. They got themselves 2 new modifieds there, equipped them with Robert Yates spec motors, and they're here tonight for the first time in their Smart Modified career. And their agenda was quite simple. As I said earlier, stay out of trouble, log all the laps, but one of the interesting quotes that I took out of this blurb that was put together, was a little bit earlier, where they said we have pretty good cars under us, not too worried about the cars. The only thing we're worried about is what's between the steering wheel and the seat. Actually, just one of us is. The other one's worried about what's between the ears. So they were having a little bit of fun pre-race in terms of how they got things rolling here tonight. And, of course, the other storyline that we were promoting quite heavily was that of Hermie Sadler. Now, Hermie is someone who has pretty much done it all in terms of motorsports and stock car involvement. He's been a team owner. He's been a driver, of course, multi-time winner in what is now the NASCAR Xfinity Series. We mentioned his Rookie of the Year honors back in 1993. And for a while, we saw him working pit reporting duties for some of Fox's Truck Series content. But it seems as though that you can only go so long before getting motivated to get back behind the wheel of a race car. And in large part, thanks to Chris Williams and company. And also, we can't forget Bill Stanley, who is here tonight, gave a pretty incredible interview down trackside. He and his team have done so much. They not only put their name on this race, as the Stanley Law Group stands with Small Business 99 presented by Smart Chevrolet. I know that's a mouthful. But they've also done a lot to get Hermie Sadler here. In fact, they're adorning the number 17 PSR products, Hermie Sadler hats, with he and his team. And like I said, when I was coming in earlier and I saw the practice charts, granted, not everyone's on the same playing field as far as tires. Seeing Hermie's name in the top half of the field was a pleasant surprise. And I know things didn't go the way they wanted in qualifying, but right now as this race runs, Hermie has certainly been doing his part in terms of being able to get that car closer to the front of the field. Currently scored 16th is that of Hermie Sadler, and we'll see if that car will stay there. Chuck Hosfeld actually finished second in that car back at South Boston Speedway, and so it's been proven. John Smith was at the helm of it at Caraway before a mechanical problem took him out. That's a really fast car and a grade A team that Hermie is joined up with, and his car is currently positioned down towards the inside retaining wall, awaiting the resumption of this cleanup. So absolutely unfortunate set of circumstances here, and not only is the track crew working very hard, but we see a number of our own smart modified officials. In fact, J.B. Cole's got the broom out in hand, and he's trying to scrub in that speed zorb as best as he can. He had a wrestling event last night, so he's probably sore in his own right, and he's going to be out there working hard to try to get this race back underway. We mentioned earlier tonight that Buddy Ellis owned number 24 of Danny Bone picking up that top 10 finish for On Point Motorsports, finished 8th after being able to avoid the carnage. Well, Danny is watching our coverage on Speed 51 TVs. Another driver whose family cut their teeth up in the New Jersey area. Danny originally from Freehold, New Jersey. And, of course, the Bone family, just generational in terms of their motorsports talent. And Danny has, in fact, made it official that he will be behind the wheel of that number 24 next week at Hickory. So mark that down as a car that is going to be one to watch and potentially one to beat in our championship finale. You want to talk about a driver coming in with nothing to lose and everything to gain in terms of what's happening in that race. Danny is going to be the guy, and after being able to talk to him following one of his podium finishes, he absolutely loves getting behind the wheel of these cars. He does so much to work his schedule as best as he can, and pretty much the only reason why we haven't seen him behind the wheel of that car as often as possible is because of other racing commitments. So, Danny, we're looking forward to having you back, and hopefully the rest of this race goes according to plan for that Buddy Ellis team, and we'll see if Jonathan Brown can get his second win of the season once they work out some of the handling gremlins they've been facing early on in this race. And Brown will certainly be one to try to cycle his way back up towards the front. He's currently scored towards the back portion of the field as cleanup continues here on the main straightaway. Well, unfortunately, as you can see, the cleanup is rather extensive on the main straightaway. Our track crew is really having to make sure that speedy dry is rubbed in and spread about here, and we're trying to do our best to get this track race ready. And it's unfortunate for all of you fans who've come out with us here at Motor Mile, and also for those of you watching on Speed 51 TV. It looks though a couple drivers have elected to climb from their cars here. It's a really nice night in terms of weather-wise. We've seen pretty decent temperatures, and we've gotten very fortunate as far as the weather here, not just this evening, but throughout the entire 2021 Smart Modified Tour season. And it's a really comfortable night, but when you're sitting behind the wheel of these 600 horsepower cars and you suddenly have to come to a stop and there's no airflow coming through the cockpit, it's completely understandable why the drivers who want to climb from their cars gather about, talk about the early stages of this race. It's very similar to, it brings to that 2012 Daytona 500, where the drivers were stationed on the back straightaway and just kind of going over. It's, if I could be a fly on the wall in that backstretch there and kind of hearing some of these discussions that are taking place and how drivers are comparing the way in which their cars are handling, I'm sure it's quite interesting. And they may take this advantage to get a quick drink of water or whatever they may need, as we're trying to get a gauge on how long this may take. But it's nevertheless, you don't want all of that power going to these rear tires coming off these corners with something as slick as the fluid that is on the racetrack breaking traction. So we continue to be in a bit of a holding pattern here. 27 laps complete. Jerry Hunt Supercenter stage break right around the corner, and Max Zackham has led the way since the drop of the green. Brian Lofton runs second. Points leader Burt Myers third. Jason Myers in fourth. And Chris Finichario, your top five. Bobby Labonte sixth. Brandon Ward seventh. Jeremy Gerstner has rebounded well from the incident that he was involved in earlier that brought out the first caution, running in about the eighth spot. Ninth is where you will find Caleb Hetty. And rounding out the top 10 for now is that of John Smith and that Darrell Jones, number 19. So with that, we will check in periodically here from the tower. Understand that some of you fans may want an opportunity here to hit the reset button, whether you're here at the track and you want to stand about, stretch your legs perhaps, and get ready for the conclusion of this event, or for those of you who may be watching on Speed 51 TV, it's a chance to perhaps head on over to the fridge, grab yourself something to drink or a bite to eat, and we'll be right here standing alongside with you and trying to make sure that we get to the point where we're able to settle the penultimate race of the 2021 Smart Modified Tour. The Stanley Law Group stands with Small Business 99, presented by Smart Chevrolet here at Motor Mile. Well, it wasn't quite a halftime break. It may have been a bit of a third of the way break, and it looks as though that the engines are firing on these cars. We're actually rolling them down on the pit lane in order to clear that space on the backstretch to ensure that the track is, in fact, going to be prepared and race ready in its entirety, and that the cars that had stopped there can clear the way for the track crew, who now seems to have a lot of speedy dry going down on the venue here in order to get this track race ready. And we see they brought a tractor over from the drag strip to try to help out in these efforts as well. And obviously this is not the way in which we wanted to start this race, or at least get to this point in this race. And the speculation is that it may have in fact been a bit of rear end grease, which that is hard enough to get up in its own right. And we pretty much had to offer up a full-fledged assault on trying to figure out how the track is going to be put back in a race-ready condition, and it appears as though that we're starting to make some progress. Waiting for that 4 of Jason Myers to roll off here. Is now the leader, Max Zackham, came down the pit lane. They gave it a quick stop and check there, and the Smart Chevrolet Pace truck will continue to make its way down the back straightaway before we see how this cleanup will continue to resume. Now, for those of you who are with us, either here at Motor Mile or watching along on Speed 51 TV, I'm Eric Brennan. Absolute pleasure to be a part of the Smart Modified Tour in 2021. I've gotten to go to a lot of incredible racetracks that put on phenomenal racing, not just for modifieds, but all the way through. And I'll put Motor Mile right up on that list as well, because this place is truly something, and I mean that in the best way possible. It's provided some great racing in just the 27 laps that we've seen, and even though this has been a bit of an elongated caution, I expect the remainder of this race to be well worth the wait in terms of trying to see how things are going to play out. So the bulk of the field is making their way onto the pit lane. They're going to clear the racing surface in its entirety to allow the track crew to pretty much offer up a full assault on trying to clean up this racetrack, as all cars are now being moved onto the pit lane here. And Jason Myers may need a bit of assistance perhaps to get that car back rolling, as it did not necessarily want to fire off from the Ford spot, and he will get a push back to the pit area or get that car refired before we continue to try to clean things up here on this 4/10 of a mile oval. Well, now that the track is clear, we will see, as I mentioned, pretty much all-out assault on the racing surface in order to try to get it back to race ready, with 27 of the 99 laps complete, with the Jerry Hunt Supercenter stage break just around the corner, and the field now making their way up on the pit lane. And let's utilize this opportunity here just to kind of rehash some of the pit rules that we're going to see executed tonight. We've already seen it a couple of times under these two yellows that kind of slowed the field on more than one occasion. But this pit, if you're familiar with Bristol Motor Speedway, which ironically is not too far from here, when they have their pit stops under yellow, the field, even though it's two split and separate pit lanes in terms of there's not a concrete retaining wall that wraps all the way around like you would see at Martinsville, here it is to a front and a back pit area. And with the field in the size that it is here tonight, with 28 cars in total, they did have to position some teams to have to service their cars on the back straightaway. Now, being the fact that these aren't live pit stops. We will see positions gained and lost during these pit stops. In the name of fairness, they elected to kind of set up this pit lane like what you have at Bristol Motor Speedway. So they will enter in turn number 2. Everybody under a caution flag would enter off of the exit of turn 2, have to negotiate their way down the back straightaway to the inside of the apron of the racetrack in turns 3 and 4 at pit road speed before coming onto the main straightaway and seeking their team for service. Now, if you were on the opposite side of the race course, you would have to obviously make your way to your pit stall in the backstretch and then work your way around to the exit of turn 1 to rejoin the field. So that's something which we're going to have to keep in mind when these pit stops take place a little bit later on, and we start to see who and when they're going to put on that one fresh sticker, "Who's your tire?" But so far tonight, Max Zackham has been in a league of his own. I had a chance to talk to him during the on-track pit party, and Max is someone who, I joked with him earlier, he's come up and ran Turkey Derby numerous times at Wall Stadium, has one NASCAR Wheel of Modified Tour start on the season, but he's been a long-time Tour competitor, and he is someone who absolutely would love to embrace and enjoy the potential of being able to capture a Smart Modified win this season. So we will see how this is going to unfold once we hopefully get this race back underway. When this race does get back going, we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the championship. And again, with the format that is in place for the Smart Modified Tour this season, one of the things that you have to do in order to be championship eligible is you have to be in the top 3 in the standings once you leave here tonight. Now, so far, the majority of those drivers in the field, like that of a Burt Myers or John Smith or Jason Myers, are doing what they need to do. Smith being a little bit too far outside of his clinching spot of 7th. He's running in 10th right now. But Brian Lofton, who's kind of on the outside looking in, he's the one who's really trying to upset the apple cart as far as how things were stationed and standing when they came into tonight's race. Now, we went over a couple of scenarios that Burt Myers, John Smith, and Jason Myers have in store, but for Brian Lofton, he's 11 points below that cutoff line, so he would have to finish at least 4 positions ahead of Jason Myers to advance. Now, as they run right now, keep in mind, Myers needed a push to get back rolling, so I'm not quite sure if he's going to stay at the tail end of the pack, but at the time of the yellow, Lofton was only 2 spots ahead of Jason Myers. That's not enough in order for him to leapfrog over car 4 to try to squeeze his way into a potentially championship clinching spot here. I should say championship contending clinching spot. Now, there's been a lot of conversation and dialogue, and I mentioned that championship and points breakdown that is available on the Smart Modified social media account. And in that write-up, Tour Director Chris Williams was pretty adamant about the fact that this is something that they never imagined the points being this close, and the necessity for this reset and playoff was something that came into frame when they initially designed the Smart Modified Tour for 2021. He's actually, in fact, quoted here as saying, "We figured it would be exciting to have a one-race playoff due to the length of the schedule, but going into last week, we ended up having 6 cars close enough to strike." Chris did, in fact, say that they would be open to the opportunity and potential of maybe revisiting their championship point system for next season, and we will see how that unfolds, so stay tuned. Also, I know we mentioned the Drivers' Championship is in the spotlight, and we've touched on this a couple of times here tonight. But that Buddy Ellis number 24 that Jonathan Brown is wheeling, and as we mentioned, trying to grab his 2nd win of the season, if at all possible. We said that Danny Bone will be back in that car for the October 9th finale next Saturday at Hickory, but Buddy and his team, they're leading the Tour owner standings by a pretty considerable margin. That's how strong that car has been, with Danny Bone at the wheel, as well as Jonathan Brown, and also the one race in which, or the few races in which John Smith was at the helm to kick off the 2021 season. So Buddy Ellis and company trying to outduel those of Burt Myers, Gary Myers, Grady Jeffries, and Terry Hall, who make up the top 5 in owner standings coming into the final race of the season next week. So a lot to still be decided as the cars work in the speedy dry here all around this 4/10 of a mile oval, and we are hopefully inching closer to getting this race back going. And we see the number 5 of Tom Buzzy down in the pit lane. Want to give a shout out to Speed 51's Elgin Trailer, who is with us tonight, manning the camera and actually setting everything up for those of you who are not able to be with us tonight at Motor Mile. And Buzzy, who had that 4th place finish at Dominion, trying to work off the momentum there, unfortunately seems to have a flat right front tire. They're looking to change that tire out here, which may negatively impact their strategy for the remainder of the race. We'll have to see how the officials rule that one. They're actually looking over that tire over off on the right-hand side of that car, and they were also doing some checks there on the suspension. Buzzy, who hails from Statesville, North Carolina, a generational racing family. In fact, his son just started racing quarter midgets not that long ago. That's a family-owned and operated team with a TFR distribution number 5, and Buzzy was trying to continue to ride that wave of momentum that he kick-started with that Dominion finish 2 weeks back. And unfortunately here it looks as though they've got their hands full with a stroke of bad luck, but better now than later in this race, as there's probably still a lot left to happen. Behind them, you see the Hillbilly Motorsports number 79 of James Savali. They've been working underneath the rear end of that car pretty much since the drop of the green flag. Savali and company, or Savali, I should say, not liking something that is happening on the backside of that car. Not happy with the feel, perhaps, and just handling gremlins have been plaguing this team, and they had a little bit of bad luck earlier on in the season. Missed the start at Florence due to a motor issue, and as we mentioned, due to work commitments, Savali was not with us at Dominion 2 weeks ago. It was car's late model points leader in Bobby McCarty, who got his opportunity to get behind the wheel of this tour type modified for the team, was giving it a good run before he too suffered some misfortune, and we hope to potentially see McCarty back in competition in the not too distant future. So the field continues to work in that speedy dry. In fact, now the track looks decent from our perspective. We may be waiting on these pit stops to wrap up here for these couple of cars that are on the pit lane, with the Smart Chevrolet Pace truck continuing to parade Max Zackham ahead of Brian Lofton and Burt Myers, your top 3. We talk about the incredible stat. We've had 7 different winners in the first 9 races of the season, this being round number 10 of 11. And if we're looking for a couple of names that have yet to find victory lane, how about the front 4 as they run? Zackham, Lofton, Myers, Finacciario. Neither of those drivers have gone to victory lane in 2021, as Mike Norman comes down the pit lane as well. So the potential of handing out another winner's trophy to a new name in 2021, it continues to loom. The hope here may be that once we release these 3 cars to rejoin the tail end of the pack, we will get set to re-rack the field with the CitraSafe Choose Cone and hopefully get this race back going in what's going to be a sprint to the finish in terms of the Jerry Hunt Supercenter stage. Looks as though we're going to go around at least one more lap before we do, in fact, see that CitraSafe Choose Cone on the racetrack, and that will allow these drivers to select where they want to restart. Let's take this opportunity now to thank our friends at Citrus Safe. Now, Citrus Safe is actually a non-toxic biodegradable grill cleaner that was founded back in 1997, but under a different name. Back then it was dubbed Bryson Cleaner. Well, in 2003, they rebranded to the name that we all know and love today, Citrus Safe. And you can find their products nationwide in stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, and Walmart, as well as many others. Be sure to check them out for all of your grill cleaning needs or on the web at citrussafe.com. That's Citrus Safe, proud sponsor of the Smart Modified Tour Choose Cone. And that Citrus Safe Choose Cone finds its way on the start-finish line, courtesy of our very own Chris Honeycutt. And Max Zackham is going to elect the bottom, while Brian Lofton will go high. Burt Meyer is going to restart inside of row number 2 with Finichario up top. So far, everybody pretty much just crisscrossing their way, as they would should we have doubled them up. That is until Dennis Holdren gets up to that Choose Cone and elects the bottom of the racetrack. And this is a lot of cars to have to elect where in which they want to restart. And let's keep in mind, there are some heavy hitters towards the back of the field right now by virtue of misfortune, getting refired, or pit strategy. James Savali is back there. Jason Myers, he's got to be patient and avoid trouble here on this upcoming restart, because he is towards the bottom portion of the running order right now, and he does not want to get swept up in something not of his own doing and take him out of the potential of competing for a championship. Lights are out. Finally, atop the Smart Chevrolet Pace truck. And I see a lot of fans celebrating this one here as we're about to get set to go back racing. Our chief starter, J.B. Cole, giving the 1-to-go signal, something that I feel like we've been waiting for quite a long time. The track is race ready, and the Smart Chevrolet Pace truck will duck back down towards the pit lane. Max Zackham trying to hold on for the Jerry Hunt Supercenter stage win, while Brian Lofton is trying to race his way in the championship contention. We'll have a few laps to settle the stage. Here they come to the Fatheads restart zone, and after a long wait, we are finally back underway. And that bottom line is a little bit slippery there, as Zackham lost the lead to Lofton on the outside lane. Now Burt Myers stuffs it in down low to try to take third. Lofton, new leader for the first time tonight. Myers got squirreling on the bottom side of Finichario, had to catch the car, almost came up into the side of the driver out of Penfield, New York, who takes third. Lofton leading at the line, double wide outside the top 10 for now, but single file throughout most of the front runners trying to make it to the end of this stage. Zackham's going to drive it in deep here to the final corner. $300 on the line, and Brian Lofton wins the Jerry Hunt Supercenter stage. You talk about a driver who's confident. Brian Lofton has been able to work the inside, outside, top side, bottom side, and on that restart, it was the outside that gave him the shot to get around Max Zackham for the stage win. So it's Zackham who has to settle for second behind that of Lofton, and Finichario able to outduel the points leader, Burt Myers, who had a slip down in turn 1 on the last restart, and it was Myers who finished one spot out of the money. Behind Burt Myers in fourth, Brandon Ward. And we will address this just because of the fact that facts are facts, and these are things that have happened so far this season. But those two, Car 1 and Car 2, have just had a really hard time being able to stay away from one another. We saw the much publicized season finale that took place at Bowman Gray Stadium, where Burt was vying for his 11th track championship. That was an honor that went to Tim Brown, who was able to lay claim to that. We hope to see Tim back in Smart Modified competition. It's been a while since his Tour Type Modified was out in action with us. But Tim was able to take home top honors after these two had a bit of a scuffle. And then it continued, in fact, just a couple of races ago, the last time that Brandon Ward and this team was in competition with the Smart Modifieds. They had a run-in late in the going at Carteret County, and the emotions kind of spilled over towards the post-race action. So far tonight, though, even though we're only 30 laps into this 99-lap affair, they've been able to keep a lot of distance between the two of them, and it looks as though that distance is going to grow greater. Brandon Ward is pitting here out of a top 5 position, and he comes to the attention of his crew there in one of the first pit stalls at the end of the back straightaway. He's joined on the pit lane by Hermie Sadler, who brings the PSR Products number 17 down for a stop, as well as that second Hillbilly Motorsports number 179 of Paul Hall. Brian Weber comes down for service as well. A couple of cars taking advantage here. You don't necessarily have to pit, and you don't have to put on that new tire every time you come down. If these drivers want to make some adjustments or try to take a swing at things in terms of chassis setup, this is their opportunity. Not quite sure what they're doing on the 2 car, but this is going to give us a chance here to see what the plan is for the rest of these teams. Paul Hall looks as though he may be getting a new right rear tire. I see that tire kind of fixed there, getting set to go on the right rear of that machine, or they're actually looking, it looks like they're, there it is. Now they're taking the old one off. They're going to put that new sticker tire on for Paul Hall, who, remember, had the spin in qualifying. Not seeing a similar change for Sadler or that of Brian Weber, who rolls off the pit lane before the Pace truck passes by. Now, you cannot lose a lap in the pit lane, as Sadler's going to need a bit of a push to get that car refired. It finally gets back going, but he'll have to wait for the field to come by. And here comes Brandon Ward as well, victim there of the stop-and-go paddle before they could rejoin the tail end of the pack. This caution, a good break for Craig Young in the 03, who's going to be able to get his lap back. He's trying to make his way up and around the leaders and the Pace truck by virtue of the free pass on this most recent caution. And he will pull up alongside and by the Smart Chevrolet Pace truck and reassume his position at the tail end of the field. Speaking of that Smart Chevrolet Pace truck, let's take this chance to thank the incredible folks at Smart Chevrolet, which it truly is the perfect match. When I heard that Smart Chevrolet was involved with the Smart Modified Tour, I thought that it was a little bit too good to be true. Was one derived from the other or vice versa? And it turns out it's a really unique coincidence, and it happens to be the perfect partnership. Now, Smart Chevrolet and Body Shop has been your North Carolina dealer, providing high-quality new and used vehicles since 1986. Visit their showroom in Madison, North Carolina, or check them out on the web, smartchevrolet.com. Smart Chevrolet, not only the sponsor of our Pace truck, but also the presenting sponsor of tonight's Stanley Law Group Stands with Small Business 99 here tonight at Motor Mile. And the Citrus Safe Choose Cone is back in action, and Lofton, despite taking the lead on the outside in the last restart, is going to choose the bottom. So Brian Lofton elects the inside. That's going to put Max Zackham outside for the first time tonight. Finichario third. Points leader Burt Myers in fourth. And then we get to a little bit of where some of the shuffling has gone on due to the fact that we saw some pit stops. Bobby Labonte up into the top 5. He's talking to members of his team earlier tonight, and they talked about they thought they had him a little bit too tight in qualifying, but they were confident with what they had underneath them tonight for the race. And ironically, that was the same story for Jeremy Gerstner, who he will restart up alongside of here. And Gerstner was very, very confident about his race car tonight. And despite being involved in the incident that brought out the first caution in this race in turn 1, Gerstner has cycled his way back up into the 6th spot with Caleb Hetty 7th and John Smith 8th, 1 spot shy of the position he needs to finish to guarantee himself a shot at racing for a Smart Modified Championship. Jimmy Wallace and Dennis Holdren round out your top 10 as we're a half lap away from green, and we will hit the line with 69 laps to go. So Brian Lofton, the second leader of tonight's contest, alongside the driver who led the opening 27 laps of this race, Max Zackham, with Finichario and Burt Myers, your top 4. Into the Fatheads restart zone they come. We're back underway from Motor Mile. And the front row got a pretty good breakaway from the rest of the pack there as Zackham is able to slot in line. 2nd spot behind Lofton, still side by side for 3rd. Myers runs wide up top, and it's Finichario trying to keep edge there in turn 1. May concede the spot to Myers, and he does. Boy, that outside line has been a very unique option so far on more than one occasion tonight. And now it's Jeremy Gerstner, the Flying Floridian, trying to make that top side work. Gerstner will fend off Bobby Labonte for now as they work their way around the outside of Brian Weber, who was late getting off the pit lane. He pulls down low. Whoa, that was tight with Labonte, threading the needle there and having to lift to allow Gerstner an opportunity to sort down in front of him. Caleb Hetty with a move on John Smith at the end of the back straightaway as they come out of turn 4. Petty and the Tommy Baldwin Racing, number 7 NY, has been absolutely dominant in terms of his racing obligations and commitments this season. Now back behind the wheel of a car that he drove to victory early in the season at Florence, while Max Zackham is underneath Brian Lofton for the race lead. Buzzy Beavers yields to the leaders down in turn 3. They're going to come up on the back. I think it's the 03 of Craig Young. It is. Lofton down to the bottom, while Beavers is well off the pace on the main straightaway. Craig Young is going to pedal it and allow Lofton to get by. Almost comes up into the side of Zackham. Meanwhile, things check up big time further back as Myers, Jason Myers that is, and Tom Buzzy are trying to cut a trail to the front. Dennis Holdren gets kicked aside. Battle for the lead. Nose to tail on the main straightaway. Zackham is right there after losing the lead to Myers, 2 laps shy of the stage break. And he has been applying constant pressure to the rear nerf bar of Lofton, who runs wide off turn 4. This fight going on a good bit up in front of Burt Myers, who holds 3rd. Bobby Labonte making the move on Jeremy Gerster to try to take over 4th. Next in his gun sights is going to be Finichario. Zackham gets a huge run off the corner, but just doesn't have an avenue to try to get by as Lofton runs the middle of the road. Here comes back Zackham. A power move off turn 4 to go to the lead at the line. Zackham back out in front and has opened up a couple of car lanes. Best race right now for 4th. Finichario, Labonte, Gerstner, Hetty in a 4-car knot, with Labonte using the apron to try to corner on the inside. Boy, Finichario left him just enough wiggle room to try to squeeze that car between himself and the apron, as Labonte now is directly alongside of Finichario off 4. Caleb Hetty's going to try to do what the Cup champion just did. Squares up Gerstner as they go to 1. Labonte is through Finichario to move to 4th. Hetty up to 6th in and around Gerstner. And now we'll see what he could do with the driver of car 8. Max Zackham has left the field. Problems for Daniel Yates. He has brought his car to the pit lane here under green as we inch closer to the halfway point. And that battle continues to rage as there's almost contact between Finichario and Gerstner, with Gerstner taking the spot away. Behind them is John Smith, who is running where he needs to. In fact, he needs at least one more spot to cement himself an opportunity to race for a championship next week. Finichario is up ahead, and that Buddy Ellis, zone number 24 of Jonathan Brown, is also in that Congo line with Jimmy Wallace and Savali. Continues to be Max Zackham, who is having to negotiate lap traffic. Gets around Brian Weber. That fight for second is starting to intensify in a big way. Brian Lofton, who needs a near-perfect night, is currently trapped in behind Brian Weber. And Burt Myers is starting to close up, as is that of Bobby Labonte. Daniel Yates will rejoin the race, multiple laps down, but he continues on. Lofton running up the racetrack, taking a bit of a middle line there as Caleb Hetty wants to have some fun and join this party, with Gerstner not that far behind. John Smith working the outside on Finichario to take that spot away. Moves Smith up into 7th. And while Zackham now works the outside of some pretty sporty cars in the field, he just put Mike Norman a lap down and Hermie Sadler in the PSR Product 17. Zackham is flying. Lofton now left to try and deal with the competitors, in which Zackham has been able to put a lap off the leaders. Lofton is clear. Myers 3rd. Labonte 4th. Hetty your top 5. And Hermie Sadler is going to come to the pit lane as well. Also, Finocchiario has had to come down and stop here. After a top 10 run for Finocchiario, he is on the pit lane. And boy, so much action taking place around this 0.4 of a mile oval here at Motor Mile, and the laps are blitzing by for Max Zackham. So Finocchiario's night may be over after running top 5 for most of it. Dennis Holdren also to the apron of the racetrack. Boy, attrition starting to take its toll in this 28-car field as Holdren, one of the Virginia natives and former track champions here at Motor Mile, has come down to the pit lane, and the crew is looking at the motor. Zackham continues to lead the field right now as he comes off of turn 2. That battle for second kind of calmed down just a little bit for the time being, while Myers rides third, Labonte fourth, Hetty fifth. And then they got about a half a straightaway. Big bobble there off of 4 by Caleb Hetty. That car almost snapped around coming off the 4th corner. In a race that started out with a few quick cautions, an oil down that left this race in a pausing standard for just a short while. Now been able to click off some green flag racing here with Zackham getting back out in front into the lead, and really reluctantly not willing to let it go just yet, I should say. Zackham, though, in very heavy traffic. That's Rusty Skews just in front of him while Lofton starts to close up here. This is going to be an opportunity for Lofton to try to challenge for that lead back. Brian Weber goes another lap down. Now Zackham's got to deal with Rusty Skews just in front of him. And a lot of these cars have exhausted the traction limit of the back tires here as we enter what is about to be the final 40 laps of this race. Under 40 to go here. Boy, Rusty Skews with a bobble in front of Zackham here, who draws even with him off turn 4. And Zackham is able to finally put Skews one lap down with Lofton, Myers, Labonte, and Hetty starting to close up here. And now it's Lofton who's having a hard time getting around Rusty Skews. He goes to the high side with Myers looking low. That's the battle for second off turn 2. With Zackham about a half a straightaway further forward. Boy, the traffic here tonight has been madness. Lofton cannot get around Rusty Skews right now on the backstretch. May start to see that front Nerf bar get a bit of a workout here if this gets all the more difficult, with Zackham also struggling in traffic further up the road. And the pack that they're about to catch is housing some pretty big names in terms of drivers who have a lot on the line. Jason Myers is in that mix. James Savali is in that mix. And the leader is starting to catch them quickly. And Jason Myers is having fits trying to get through Savali. That car was caught the inside retaining wall the last time he came out of 4. Myers, someone who wants to go to Hickory with a shot at the championship, got a car way high, turn 4. That's Brian Weber, who dusted off the wall, and he got up there high enough to draw the yellow. Caution is out. Brian Weber was the car that got way up out towards the wall, and this is going to put a mix into this race as far as strategy. So Brian Weber was the car that took off towards the outside retaining wall there. Not sure if he made contact, but nevertheless it will slow this field at a very pivotal time in this race, where I'm sure the pit lane is going to be very, very busy. You could already judge by the attitude of the teams. They're getting themselves preparated. I see the Hillbilly Motorsports team with their sticker tire in hand. So before we get an official indication that the pit lane is going to be open, let's do a little bit of housekeeping here on cars that have had some problems early on in this race. 28 cars came down for the green flag. Luke Fleming is 43 laps off the pace after he had his problem earlier on in the night. Buzzy Beavers is out of this one as well. Craig Young is multiple laps down in the 0-3 car, and it looks as though that he too may be done for the night as that car is over at its race hauler. We saw Daniel Yates go a number of laps down, did return to the race, did that of Yates, but not quite sure if he's elected to keep that number 18 car on the racetrack or not. Don't see him out there right now, so we'll try to follow up and get confirmation there. Chris Finichario, that team already loading that car up. Not quite sure what went undone there after running top 5 throughout most of the night. He is out of the race as well. And Hermie Sadler's much anticipated tour type modified debut currently sees Hermie back in 23rd spot after he had to come down for a stop under green. And I don't believe that Hermie is going to be able to make it home for the checkered flag as well. Dennis Holdren remains on the racetrack. Final car running 3 laps off the pace, as is that of Brian Weber and Troy Young. Mike Norman also 3 laps down. Rusty Skews went 2 laps down. Paul Hall, Jamie Tomeno, Chris Fleming, and Jonathan Brown was actually scored a lap down as the pit lane is open, and here comes everybody. Max Zackham leads the whole pack through 3 and 4 under pacing speeds where everybody may most likely be putting on a fresh right rear tire. Let's see what these teams elect to do. Our points leader, Burt Myers, the first one to get to his pit stall, and it will be a new right rear that goes on car 1. Zackham just shy at the start-finish line in the pit lane. They're jacking up the backside of that car. It's going to be a fresh right rear for him as well. Same story for Bobby Labonte just behind. Same for Brian Lofton, who was 2 cars back. And remember, these pit stops, these positions will matter. Let's see who wins the race off the pit lane. Lofton down early. He's gone. Brandon Ward is going to pick up some spots here, and the first car off appears to be that of Caleb Hetty. What a job for that Tommy Baldwin Racing, number 7 NY. Hetty and company had the jack down, and he was gone. And then it's Lofton, Ward, Labonte, and then Max Zackham, who is 5th off the pit lane there. And the one car that took forever to get free was our points leader, Burt Myers. In fact, Myers is going to get stopped here by the stop-and-go paddle. Again, he will not lose a lap. But he will fall down the running order in comparison to the top 3 position he had prior to the caution and the pit stops. That group of cars now being released to the tail end of the pack here as this race has totally turned upside down with 33 laps to go. So waiting on confirmation as far as the timing and scoring and running order here as it correlates to us here in the announcer's tower. And we'll try to go back and verify that information here before we get back going. What we do know is that Brian Weber, who was one of the more recent causes of that caution flag, is going to make his way down. Tom Buzzy, you mentioned earlier he had a flat right front. They had to put a right front tire on that car. Unfortunately, this is going to cycle him to the front, but I'm not sure what the status of that machine is going to be when they get this race back going. Alongside Paul Hall may be restarting up at the second spot. However, I was showing Paul one lap down, so we'll try to verify that there. But how about young Caleb Hetty, the driver out of Shelbyville, Kentucky? And we'll flash back to Florence as the Citrus Safe Choose Cone is on the main straightaway here. And it's going to be Buzzy and Hall electing the bottom. Let's put Caleb Hetty and that Tommy Baldwin Racing machine with that new sticker right rear tire on the outside of the front row for this upcoming restart. Brian Lofton, who so far tonight has done just about everything he's needed to do, elects the outside lane as well. Brandon Ward picked the top side, and Max Zackham is going to have to try to negotiate his way around the two cars in front of him, with the only two cars that did not stop under the yellow on this upcoming restart. Caleb Hetty is a driver who captured headlines in forms of legend car competition all across the country last season, and he's continued to keep that trend rolling. There isn't much that he hasn't done in a legend car, but when they put him behind the wheel of this full-body modified with Tommy Baldwin Racing, he destroyed this car in practice at Florence. You would think that that would knock a 16-year-old kid down a couple of notches. Not at all. Hetty, after that team worked diligently to repair that machine, he got the car back at the racetrack. He set the precision-built spindle quick time award and went on to win the race, holding off Bobby Labonte at the checkered flag. Caleb Hetty now may be in the catbird seat, restarting outside of Tom Buzzy with 33 laps to go. Smart Chevrolet Pace Truck pulls off the pit to the pit lane here. Into the Fatheads restart zone they come. Buzzy and Hetty lead us back down the green. Buzzy's trying to throttle his way off the corner. Zackham 3 wide as they come out of 2. Hall in the middle. Zackham lost the spot there as they check up big time off turn 4. A lot of drivers on different agendas in the midfield right now. Buzzy, the leader. Hetty second. Lofton third. Ward fourth. And Bobby Labonte your top 5. Further back, Burt Myers trying to follow John Smith on a trail to the front as they work the outside of Jamie Tomeno off turn 2 in the first side-by-side battle. Jonathan Brown up just in front of him. Gerstner also leading that pack, and here we go. The race for third down to turn 1. Brandon Ward trying to get up to and by Brian Lofton, who has done an amazing job so far here tonight. And so far, Tom Buzzy, representing one of the little teams that could right now, in position at the front of the field, holding off Caleb Hetty. We mentioned a couple of updates for timing and scoring. Jonathan Brown is, in fact, running an 8th spot. That car was not a lap down, as we saw earlier. He's now in a top 10 running position ahead of John Smith and Burt Myers, your top 10. In fact, Burt Myers and Smith are having a go of it down there in turn 3. Burt on the bottom, Smith up top. Off of turn number 4. Whoa, that was close. Laps continuing to click off here. As far as some of our drivers who are at the top of the championship standings, as Hetty has a look for the lead off too. Hetty with the dirt bar inside of Tom Buzzy, but he can't quite get there while Ward nearly tags Lofton in the race for third. Hetty has been so strong off of turn 2. Gets another big run here off the corner. But Buzzy is able to maintain that car length advantage. Trouble. Jason Myers off turn 2. Myers spins down to the inside wall, and one of the championship hopefuls is now backwards there on the exit of turn 2. Boy, things have just gone from bad to worse for Jason Myers after being trapped in the mid-pack. Fortunately, he's able to keep that car on the lead lap and kept it off of the inside retaining wall, but Myers will fall to the tail end of this field. And that is not what Jason Myers needed, especially with Brian Lofton running in the top 3. This caution coming out, not sure if it's going to benefit Tom Buzzi, who is on that alternative pit strategy, yet has done an amazing job being able to keep that car up towards the front of the field with Caleb Hetty pressuring him all the way throughout. Was curious to see if this would, in fact, be able to kind of work as an opportunity here for Buzzi to let the tires cycle. And there looks like there's a little bit of damage there to the backside of car 5. I'll credit our friend Elgin Trailer, who's working our camera here tonight, who pointed that out to us and said that it looks like there's something from the back, maybe even part of that rear spoiler on Tom Buzzi's car, kind of flapping in the breeze a little bit. At the very least, it could be a distraction to the competition behind him, but at least during the last few laps that we've had here under green, it hasn't slowed him down any. So great catch by our cam operator here tonight with Speed 51 TV, and a special hello to all of you who are watching along with us as the Smart Modified Tour tries to set the stage for their championship finale next week. And the prerequisite to be a part of that is you have to be in the top 3 in the championship. And for Jason Myers, that just became a pretty tall order. Only a couple of cars coming down for a stop here, since everybody already came in and took on their new change tire for the most part, at least according to my notes. Gary Putnam elected to stop here. Remember, he was involved in the first caution of the race, as has Dennis Holdren, who pitted under green and fell a number of laps down. Well, we got a couple of laps left to go under caution. We keep talking about the championship and how these scenarios could, in fact, unfold. Bobby Labonte does have a shot. However, the problem is one of the cars that he has to beat tonight is 2 positions up ahead of him here. As we got a big puff of smoke coming out of Brian Weber's car down on the pit lane. It looks like his night may finally be over after that scare with the wall off turn 4. But, boy, there is a lot of smoke billowing out from the front end of that car, and that may be it for Weber. Back to the championship discussion. Labonte 13 points below that cut line of the top 3. He would need to finish 2 spots ahead of Lofton and at least 8 positions ahead of Jason Myers, who is buried at the bottom portion of the running order. So we may be crunching the numbers well into the night here to try to figure out who our top 3 are going to be in the championship, as the Citrus Save Choose Cone is back on the main straightaway, and Tom Buzzi will elect the low side here for the upcoming restart. Chris Honeycutt will wheel that Citrus Save Choose Cone back to a safe space, while our chief starter, J.B. Cole, will indicate the 1 to go signal here. Well, it's going to be a typical Saturday night short track shootout. 25 laps to go in the Stanley Law Group Stands with Small Business 99, presented by Smart Chevrolet. Tom Buzzi trying to play the role of the spoiler, the little team that could, if you will, alongside of Tommy Baldwin Racing's number 7 NY with Caleb Hetty, Brian Lofton with so much to race for. Inside of row 2 with Brandon Ward up top, Bobby Labonte and Max Zackham, your top 6. The pace truck peels off into the Fatheads restart zone they come. 25 laps to settle it at Motor Mile. That was the most tightly packed restart we've had all night, and Tom Buzzi's got the edge in 3. Hetty slots in a second, looking low for the race lead off turn 4, while Brandon Ward slides his way by Brian Lofton for 3rd. Oh, Buzzi's trying to keep that car on the bottom of the racetrack, but Hetty's looking high now. A late apex off the corner as Hetty gets a big run off turn 4. Brandon Ward to 3rd, Jonathan Brown working the top side. Hetty with a big run. The battle for the leads in 3. Buzzi trying to pin him down. Hetty bounces off the left side of Buzzi's car. We're side by side at the line. Ozzie trying to hang tough up top, but Henny's got the advantage off of 2. Oh, trouble! John Smith spins! And Chris Fleming tags the wall, and a big hit there by Rusty Skews in the back of Jamie Tomeno. Another championship hopeful, having some problems late in the going at Motor Mile. A quick glance up towards the back straightaway. I saw John Smith spinning broadside into oncoming traffic, and he is somehow able to drive away from that one. Chris Fleming got turned in the stack-up after he did not partake in qualifying earlier due to a mechanical problem. His car remains at the entrance of Turn 3. And I saw Rusty Skews come from further back, and I believe he may have hopped over the 1990 Whelen Modified Tour champion and Jamie Tomeno, and he's got some serious damage to the right side of that marked Audi owned 07A in tonight's field. And that was a wreck that could have saw a lot of really hard hits, and fortunately everybody except for that of Chris Fleming was able to drive away from that one. But John Smith, second in points, again, had to finish 7th or better to cement his own fate. And right now, that Darrell Jones Motorsports operation, and that car is rolling down the main straightaway here, and it doesn't appear to have very significant damage. But that's back-to-back cautions where 2 of our top 3 in points have been a part of a pretty big scare in terms of their chances to try to come through and grab themselves a chance to race for a title next week at Hickory. Jamie Tomeno on the pit lane. He's going to come down for stop. Looks like there may be some damage to Jason Meyer's car after he was running at that portion of the racetrack when that wreck happened. In fact, it looks like the left rear bodywork of that vehicle is all knocked askew and pointed upward. And that is where the Myers Brother Racing team will go to work on Jason Myers and see them hammering away, trying to get that bodywork clear of the left rear tire. We mentioned earlier, these cars about a second faster than the late models who were here hauling the mail in the sub-15 second bracket at this racetrack. And we've seen in the past the track record that was held by Brian Lofton in competition. It was a 14.680. We saw a 14.8 in qualifying. That's right about 100 to 101 miles per hour average around this venue. So you don't want any of that sheet metal cutting into the left rear tire, and that's what Myers' team is working diligently to try to prevent from happening. We see Dennis Holdren coming down for another stop in the pit lane. It's not been the kind of night that they were hoping for. The marked Audi owned and operated team. He's joined here by Paul Hall, who will come to the attention of his Hillbilly Motorsports team as well. And all the while, Chris Fleming is on the hook. It has not been a good night for the father-son duo of Chris and Luke Fleming as they both end their nights prematurely here. Chris with his involvement of this accident here on the main straightaway, and Luke, of course, with mechanical problem in Uncle Frank's number 40. And it's been very unfortunate here tonight. And we understand the trackside report from our very own Justin Mincy that the right side or the right front of Chris Fleming's car is the reason, or the amount of damage that he sustained there in that stack-up is the reason for the retirement of Fleming's number 13 from this race. So we hinted at an old school Saturday night style of a shootout towards the end. but we just shaved about 3 laps off of the last attempted restart, and the racing has been very close all throughout. And unfortunately for Tom Buzzy, he did not have the edge on the last restart. Going to restart here in about the 3rd spot, but Max Zackham is slowly starting to creep his way back into the picture after being the dominant car in the opening half of this race. The running order may shuffle here, so we'll hold off on giving you a bit of a full field rundown at this point. But we wanted to provide the opportunity here to mention the fact that Caleb Hetty is leading, Brandon Ward second, Buzzy third as they run with the Citrus Safe Choose Cone upcoming. Now, with a field as strong as 28 cars, whoever takes home our Carolina Drilling Blast to the Front Award, they are most certainly going to have earned it. Now, Carolina Drilling is a well drilling contractor located in Mocksville, North Carolina. They're a leader in both drilling and blasting in the region, and they are a proud sponsor of the Carolina Drilling Blast to the Front Award. This award is given to the highest finishing non-Smart Tour winner in the final rundown. A special thanks goes out to Jason Tutterow and all the fine employees at Carolina Drilling for their continued support of modified racing. Also big supporters of Jimmy Wallace and his modified ventures, as the Citrus Safe Choose Cone is back out on the front stretch, and Caleb Hetty will elect the inside. Jonathan Brown, we talked about this race kind of unfolding in a similar fashion as his win at Caraway did. He's going to pick the bottom. He's going to move up in the 5th spot for this upcoming restart here. So it's Caleb Hetty and Brandon Ward, along with Tom Buzzy and Max Zackham, row 2. Jonathan Brown and Brian Lofton, row 3. Bobby Labonte, Jeremy Gerstner, row 4. And your first championship hopeful for the finale at Hickory next week, depending on how things may fall in the remaining 22 laps here. Burt Myers in 9th, James Savali in 10th. You got to drop back to row 7 to find John Smith and Jason Myers, who've got some work to do to put themselves in control of their own destiny, and they don't have a lot of time to get it done. Well, for the fans who stuck it out with us here at Motor Mile, or those of you watching along with us on Speed 51 TV, we're about to have potentially our most thrilling and competitive finish of the season. 22 laps to go. Young gun Caleb Hetty alongside of Brandon Ward going to lead us into the Fatheads restart zone. 22 laps to go from Motor Mile. Here we go. We're back underway. Ward got a bit of an edge there on the outside lane. Can he make it stick off turn 2 for the lead? Ward surging ahead, trying to pinch Hetty down as they come off turn 4. Brandon Ward, the leader at the line. And Ward will cement the top spot in turn 1. Max Zackham coming up there to battle Hetty for second. Zackham, who has had one of the most dominant cars today, trying to find a way through as they're nearly 3 wide behind him. And Jimmy Wallace is off the pace on the front straightaway. Wallace coming to pit road as Jeremy Gerstner moves up in the 5th spot. Burt Myers working the top side on Tom Buzzy, trying to get himself back up to the front. Myers now trying to work the outside of Savali while things remain relatively calm across the front 4. Burt Myers trying to cut a trail to the front. The driver who was fastest in qualifying earlier today claimed his second Precision Built Spindle Quick Time Award and is trying to make a statement en route to what may be a charge of the title as John Smith nearly loses it off turn 4. He and Gary Putnam got together, and Smith was able to save the race car. Myers not done working that top side. Outside of Gerstner, who shuts the door on corner exit. Behind them, Bobby Labonte working over Tom Buzzy for a battle inside the top 10. And Burt Myers is flying right now. Myers with a huge run off the top of the racetrack. Now looking for a spot on Brian Lofton for 4th. The question now becomes, will Burt Myers have enough time to get up there and battle with the front 3? Savali and Gerstner in that Congo line, trying to settle it out as well. in the battle for sixth position. Savali slides up in front of Gerster. That could have been big. While Labonte and Buzzy have been battling wheel to wheel since the restart. Obviously got to be frustrating for Bobby to be kind of boxed in here and trapped and unable to get past Buzzy, but this must mean a lot for Tom to be able to go wheel to wheel with a NASCAR Hall of Famer like he's doing in turn one. Jason Myers, John Smith battling it out, while Burt Myers is outside of Max Zackham for third, and he makes the pass. Does Burt Myers have enough time to catch Brandon Ward and Caleb Henny for the race lead and win? 10 to go as they hit the line. And Henny is starting to turn up the heat on the leader. And lap traffic may come into play before this race draws to a close. Henny is now there. And Burt Myers has found something. He has turned the fastest lap of the race the last 2 laps consecutively, working the top side. Henny is there, and we got a caution. Caution on the racetrack. Saw a couple of cars checking up off turn 2. John Smith was one of them, and there may be some damage. There is. John Smith with a flat right front tire. Smith, who came into the night second in championship points, and his night has now gone from bad to worse here. I saw he and Jason Myers racing quite heavily for position. Not sure if there was contact, but despite the damage, John Smith is remaining on the racetrack for right now. And you can see that carcass is about to escape from the right front of that car as Smith remains on the racetrack here with the front end dragging. While there's a lot still to unfold here, Smith, who it looks as though will duck to the pit lane this time through. We told you the potential championship clinching opportunity for Smith had to finish 7th or better. And after that big spin on the back straightaway, it's a miracle that that car is still able to participate in this race. And I'm not sure what contact may have precipitated that right front tire going down, but it's going to force Smith to come into the pit lane of that Darrell Jones operated number 19 machine. And we have to wonder if there's any additional suspension damage there, perhaps. He finally is able to get to the pit box here, and they will be able to put on an additional service tire. And I mentioned the fact they have one change tire. They do have an approved practice tire they could put on in the event of a tire going down. So you don't reap the reward of being able to put on a fresh new sticker tire when you have some bad luck like this, but it doesn't turn into a detriment as to where you cannot continue on in the race. So that's what they're bolting on the right front here as Mike Norman receives the free pass. And I got to tell you, the fastest car on the racetrack towards the end of this one has been that of Burt Myers. And we told you what he had to do. 8th or better is all he needs, no matter what the rest of the field does, to know that he would have a shot at the championship come this time next week. And he is proving on more than one occasion he doesn't really care. He wants to bring a Smarty Trophy back to his hard-working and dedicated crew. And, oh, by the way, of the 2 cars that remain in front of him, youngster Caleb Henny and Brandon Ward, who the last time these 2 were on the racetrack together, they had a little bit of a coming together. We'll see how they race each other out here in these closing stages with less than 10 laps to go. Max Zackham has done an amazing job all night long. It appears as though that car may be fading late, but he has still been able to keep that vehicle up in the top 4 throughout most of tonight's race. And Brian Lofton maybe hoping for an opportunity here to work his way into one of those championship spots, courtesy of the bad luck that we've seen plague that of John Smith and Jason Myers. And I'll offer up a disclaimer right off the jump. I am going to be the last person to try to crunch the numbers on this one here when this race is over. I will turn that over to the Smart Modified officials to try to cement who the top 3 will be running for the championship at Hickory next time by. But first, we got a race to settle. The Citrasafe Choose Cone is back up on the main straightaway, and Brandon Ward will elect the bottom Caleb Petty outside. And how about this? Burt Myers is loving that top side so much he is going to forego the opportunity to line up inside of row number 2. He wants the outside lane. That's going to put Max Zackham to his inside. Jeremy Gerstner also taking advantage of the bottom lane to move up to 5th inside of Brian Lofton. With Labonte and Savali row 4. And it's going to be Jonathan Brown and Tom Buzzy, your top 10. And that means that Jason Myers outside the top 10, John Smith outside the top 10 as they run with what is going to be a 9-lap sprint to the checkers. So far, we're showing 15 cars on the lead lap. All the way back to John Smith, who is shown as the last car on the lead lap, restarting in that 15th spot behind that of Paul Hall and Jason Myers. Brandon Ward looking for his first Smart Modified win of the season, as is that of Max Zackham and Burt Myers in the front 4. Caleb Petty looking for his second 9-lap shootout at Motor Mile. Brandon Ward, Caleb Petty, and company bring us down for the restart. Petty clear of the competition to fall in line behind that of Brandon Ward, while Burt Myers works the top side. Lofton and Zackham side by side for 4th, with a gaggle of cars there off of 2. And Burt Myers may have that outside line rolling, but does he have enough speed to get up to and around Caleb Petty to give himself a shot? Trouble, turn 4. Savali spins off the corner. And John Smith dodges another one. Tom Buzzy with a flat right front tire, but how in the world did John Smith avoid the stationary car Savali? And he is hot. Savali quickly whips that car into the pit lane. Doesn't even bring it to the attention of his pit crew. Now he's going to back it up here. And he was racing for position. Looked as though he got shoved up to the high side, tried to get back down, found himself outside of a 3-wide fight. And he will bring that car to a stop here with the Hillbilly Motorsports team. And Savali is furious. And it looks as though by the attitude of what's happening inside the cockpit of the race car, Savali may be calling it quits here. As Tom Buzzy rolls his way past, this is unfortunately going to be the second time that they would have to put a tire on, and Tom Buzzy is going to call tonight as well, fresh off that top 5 that he had at Dominion last week. Kind of squeezed in the middle here, coming off turn 4, and as we said, that was the second time where that tire went down, and unfortunately they're going to have to bolt on the rolling tires to get that thing back in the trailer. So even with about 8 laps to go, attrition still playing a big role in how this race unfolds, and that may be what the front runners wanted to see here. After Brandon Ward got a spectacular restart, Caleb Petty was not really able to stay with him all that long off the corner, fell back in behind Ward. Those two cars appear a bit evenly matched, but Burt Myers appears to be quite committed to the top side of the racetrack here. And we see Savali out of Meriden, Connecticut, climbing from the car and just really struggling to shake the bad luck off both he and this team's back so far this season. Remember, at Franklin County, was in contention for a win and a victory there. It was a last lap pass by John Smith that got him up there and in position to lay claim to that victory. But Savali was leading and doing everything possible in order to try to hold on for the win. We thought it would be a certainty that we'd see Savali in victory lane before the season was out, especially with that crew that he has behind him. But It is not going to be tonight here at Motor Mile. So Brandon Ward ahead of Caleb Hetty, who rides in front of the point leader, Burt Myers. You want to talk about somebody who's had a bit of a topsy-turvy night? When Burt came down for that stop, he ended up cycling out well down towards the bottom portion of the running order. And he's been able to drive his way back up through the field. And he appears to have one of the best cars. It's been one of the fastest for sure later in this run. Ahead of Brian Lofton and Max Zackham. And this caution is going to be extended here as the cleanup crew is working their way down the back straightaway. And Jason Myers is going to take advantage of that and come down for another stop and maybe some service before we get this race back going. That is, of course, if Myers can make it under power. That car is rolling very slowly there in the pit lane. I'm not sure that Jason's got that car running right now. And that car will roll to a stop. So Jason Myers, another one of the potential championship hopefuls here. We saw this car struggle to refire after the stoppage earlier for the track cleanup after the fluid was laid down. And now that car came down the pit area and has stopped on the infield of inside of turn 3. So right now the track crew is giving a little bit of attention where Savali's car came to rest. After that spin, it looked as though that the vehicle might have overheated a little bit, left behind some residue on the racing surface. So the track crew, who has been very busy here tonight at Motor Mile, is going to have to pop out here and make sure that that area is clean and ready to go, especially with an all-important restart upcoming. And unfortunately, Jason Myers, it looks like they might be putting fuel in that car. And that is, Elgin was able to get us a close-up shot there. Myers ran that car out of fuel. Wow, so that is why we saw the car come down. I'm not sure if he was on a bit of a short fill when they started this race, or if perhaps the number of caution laps that we ran throughout the night is starting to catch up to some of these teams. And it looks like they got enough in there perhaps to get him towards the end, but he's going to need the assistance of a push truck to get that car refired, and he will again have to start at the tail end of the pack. What a weird night so far for some of these drivers who thought they may have an easy way into that championship playoff that will take place next week at Hickory. And boy, for Myers here, that's really going to set him behind the 8 ball. Jason Myers, that is. And Elgin Trailer also not only doing the incredible job here on the camera to point out that they were adding fuel to that 4 car, but also pointing out that charge we were referencing with Burt Myers, it started back in the 14th spot. Remember, he came down for that fresh tire, but with these being live action pit stops, he really ended up on the short end of the stick there once the service was completed, and it put him in a position to have to restart well outside the top 10. He's up to 3rd, currently holding down the Precision Built Spindle Quick Time of the Race Award, and he may not be done yet. And while the thrill of victory is certainly within reach of a lot of these drivers who circulate behind the pace truck, the absolute agony of defeat is lingering there in car 4 and Jason Myers after they're having to put more fuel in the backside of that car to try to get it to the finish of this one. And we'll have to crunch the numbers quite heavily. There was a lot of things that had to go Brian Lofton, Bobby Labonte, and Jeremy Gerstner's way for a chance to try to get up and leapfrog Jason Myers, who was 2 points out of the championship point lead coming into tonight's race. And he may still have an opportunity, perhaps, to race for a championship. And with as wild as this race has been, I'm not ruling anything out. Well, the Citrus Safe Choose cone is on the main straightaway. And the field is getting set to sort out the finish of this race. Now the question becomes, will Myers be able to make the call back for the restart here? Brandon Ward, Caleb Petty going to be a front row for this restart as our chief starter, J.B. Cole, is going to give the one to go. Myers does roll off. He will be able to join the tail end of the pack here. He still has a shot at being able to salvage the night and hope to be one of the three racing for a title next week. Before we get there, though, we got a race to settle. 8 laps to go. So far, Brandon Ward has been phenomenal on the restarts. He's going to have youngster Caleb Petty outside. Brian Lofton trying to race his way into a championship contending spot in second or inside of row 2 with Burt Myers, who's had the fastest car on the racetrack up until the last 2 yellows, restarting outside in fourth. Into the Fatheads restart zone they come. Brandon Ward, Caleb Petty trying to settle it here at Motor Mile. 8 laps to go. Petty with a good launch off of turn 2. Myers trying to cement himself in third spot. He's working outside of Petty for second as they come out of turn 4. Max Zackham got knocked up high. He's in the wall in the front straightaway. Zackham got in the fence there off the corner while Burt Myers starts to pressure Caleb Petty for second. Myers with a big run, looks low. Laps starting to click off here. Brandon Ward holding down the top spot. Zackham was able to continue on here. No caution for him. Myers with a shot to the backside of Petty for second. Myers knows he's got to go now, and Hetty is losing ground to Brandon Ward, the leader. Myers trying to set it up again. He's going to try the top side. They're both gaining a little bit of ground on Ward this time out of 4. Lofton nowhere near with 4 to go. Jamie Tomeno off the pace on the main straightaway. The race stays green to 3. Hetty trying to get a little bit of a late apex off the corner. So far, it has been about a 3-car length separation. Hetty trying to close up here, though, with Myers in tow. As they hit the line, 2 laps to go. So far, Brandon Ward has done a masterful job being able to maintain about a 2-car length advantage as he comes off the final corner. White flag for Brandon Ward. Hetty just not quite close enough and able to get there. Through the final corner. And Brandon Ward is going to become the 8th different winner in 10 races for the Smart Modified Tour. Brandon Ward wins at Motor Mile. As the fireworks go off here at the exit of turns 1 and 2 at Motor Mile, it is our 8th different winner in 10 races in 2021. It is a team that had gone to victory lane in 2020 with Joey Coulter, one of the owners and operators of this machine, at the wheel. And with a partnership with Randy Renfro, we've seen this car come out here multiple times in 2021 and compete for wins. And tonight was the night that it finally came together. Caleb Petty celebrating a second-place run while Burt Myers cements his shot at a title opportunity. But first, we are going to talk about our winner here today. With his crew, team, and family around him, pats on the chest before he even gets out of the car to celebrate the opportunity, and taking a moment to savor it after what was a long night here at Motor Mile, and they were able to parlay the strategy into a race-winning effort. And now he will climb out of the cockpit of his race car, a smart modified winner for the first time in 2021, Brandon Ward. A little bit of a splash party going on down here. Brandon's going to take the opportunity to talk to a couple of the ones who made it possible. Brandon, I'm going to try to get you on out here, bud. Brandon, buddy, we've talked so much this season, but this is the first time we get to do it in victory lane. We hadn't seen you for about a race, but you guys came back clicking on all cylinders like you have been. It was a long one, but you made it possible. How'd you guys get this win tonight?
Man, I just can't thank this race team enough. This entire Coulter Motorsports group, they do a great job. Randy Renfro, Diane Renfro for letting me drive this thing. Joe Coulter, Joey Coulter, you know, everybody that works so hard. My guys from New Day Motorsports come and help on this deal. Jeff Day, Kevin Powell, all that they do for me. Precision Built Spindle, kpmoto.com. Like I said, Coulter Motorsports. Everybody that puts so much effort into this. Don and D Stone, they help me so much throughout the year. I want to thank Don Stone for everything he does for us. Man, just so much. Progressive Racing Engines, we've been a little down. This one was hard to win. They swapped the carburetors on us, and you know, motor meant a lot here, and we just had to work hard for it. Yeah, and just, you know, all the entire Coulter family, for all that they do for me, for this race team. Like I said, Randy Renfro does an outstanding job with these race cars. LFR, Rob Fuller, you know, everybody that just works so hard, I just can't thank them enough.
You've been so close so many times in this car. Joey got in it, was able to get a podium with it. Tonight, the stars aligned. It's one of the most electric celebratory victory lanes we've had all season long. But for you in your race season in 2021, what does this mean for you, Brandon Ward, who is someone who's already got a pretty well-accomplished racing resume, to finally take home one of those Smarty trophies?
Man, it's awesome. I want to thank Chris Williams, this entire staff of the Smart Tour, for doing what they do. Mile Speedway and all these great racetracks for having us. The fans, I love coming up here to race. I've raced every kind of race car I've ever driven here, and this is one of my favorite places. So just thanks to everybody that puts it on, makes it happen. We've honestly, it's been a down year for us. We've had some seconds, some thirds. We've been close in this thing. Joey's won in it, I've won in it. We both run third in it. So just a true testament to this race program and what it is.
Well, thank you for putting on the show. What a night at Motor Mile. Once again, your winner here tonight, Brandon Ward. And here's that piece of hardware, courtesy of our Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, Chris Williams as well, handing out the Smarty Trophy, the first that Brandon Ward is able to take home after capturing top honors tonight. While the celebration continues, let's head on over here and talk to this youngster that continues to turn heads in everything he straps in. Caleb Petty, I thought it was going to be another one of those magical days for you in this Tommy Baldwin racing team. One spot short, but we had a stacked field tonight. What does this mean for you to have a runner-up finish on a night like tonight?
Man, this is really cool. I'm really thankful for coming to this track. This place is awesome. You know, even we started back there at 10th and fell back to 11th. I was still having fun. So just really grateful to be here. A bunch of fast cars, so it's always good to even finish, you know, top 10 in these races.
Well, I'll tell you, we love seeing you out here on the entry blank. There's one more points race, 2 non-points races. I know your racing schedule has been packed. You're also probably running out of room for all the trophies. But do you have a plan as to when we can see you back out here in this car?
Yeah, we'll be back at Ace. I'm really excited for it. I love driving these things, man. You can just go for it. It's a good time. So, you know, we need a little bit of a long run there at the end, but, you know, second's good. So.
Florence, it was Bobby Labonte here tonight. Brandon Ward, Burt Myers, you've been in good company, bud. I think everybody's very impressed. Great job tonight. Looking forward to seeing you at Ace.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And again, that's Caleb Hetty, an absolutely incredible young man and racer in his own right. And now we'll move on over here to a man who was able to cement and control his own destiny. Burt, you were one of the only few drivers in the field who came into the night top 3 in points, who was able to truly race your way into that shot at the title next week. I know you want the win. We talk about it every week. You race for wins. I know you came up a couple of spots short, but you got to be feeling pretty good about your chances next week.
Well, that's the one thing we tell ourselves to make us feel better about not winning a race is we're still looking at big picture. And I want to win. I'd love to win this championship, but if we could pull that off and to not win a race would hurt just a little bit. But, you know, these guys haven't quit. The year we've had, we started out really good and then had a stretch there in the middle where it was just awful. So now we've backed it up with a third, a second, and a third. We've advanced. I don't know who the other two are, but our plans are to go to Hickory and try to win the race, and then that'll seal the deal.
Well, I'll tell you what, you had the top side rolling there late. You were laying down. I think you got the fastest lap of the race. Did you just need more time there at the end to get it rolling enough to get up there and get that lead?
Well, I didn't need that last caution. We got going there, and I was making ground, and I knew with the setup, we practiced last night, and it seemed like the longer we ran, the tighter we got. So we wanted to do everything we could. Thanks. Try to do everything we could to start the race free. And we went a little too far, so when we came in and made our adjustments, we tried to allow for that. And then when we got those cautions and the tires cooled down, it just got a little free, and I lost some of my forward drive. But these guys just don't quit. You know, we're going to do everything we can to keep getting the victory lane, and hopefully we can capture this Smart Championship. But thanks to these fans, thanks to Motor Mile, these are the tracks that modifieds need to be racing at. So hats off to Motor Mile and all these other tracks that are having us here. Thanks for these fans for coming out and cheering us on and allowing us to come out here and show off for you just a little bit. But we're going to Hickory to try to win both of them, man.
Well, like you said, I don't know who the other two are, but I do know who one of them is, and that's Car 1. Good luck next week. Happy you're going to be in the mix, and like you said, hopefully you'll be able to go for a twofer there.
Thanks, man. I got to say thanks to Tommy from CitraSafe. He made the trip up here to Virginia tonight to watch, and couldn't do it without my sponsors. So him and Alan at Backyard Leisure, Mac at Haviland Supply, John at Cleanup Supply. Like I said, these guys, man, they just follow me up the road. They don't ever question me. They just follow me, and they stick in there. And, you know, my name's on the roof, and I'm standing here getting my picture made. But without these guys, I couldn't do it.
Well, you're going to be racing for a championship next week. Great job. Another top 3 finish. What a year. Burt Myers, we'll see you in Hickory.
Thank you.
And that is your top 3 from tonight here at Motor Mile. It's been an absolutely amazing and incredible evening here. For those of you watching on Speed 51 TV, we've got more action coming your way as well, as we got a couple more races on the docket here tonight. But we're going to walk back on over here and take this opportunity and catch up just one more time with Bill Stanley. Bill, you presented the winning trophy to Brandon Ward. It was a long one. It was a long race. We had to come back for a couple of cleanups. What a night. What did you make of Motor Mile in this Smart Modified event?
Listen, this is a great racetrack. These are the greatest fans in Virginia that stuck it out, because sometimes the longest races are the best races. And this was a great finish for Brandon. I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of his team. I'm proud of everybody that participated and competed tonight. This is why racing is back in Virginia. It was born in Virginia. It will stay in Virginia. It will grow in Virginia. And I want to thank Chris Williams and the Smart Modified Tour. I want to thank Hermie Sadler for coming out. Everybody give Hermie Sadler a round of applause for coming out again. He hadn't raced since 2018, and he gave it a great shot. His battery died on him, but we're going to be back out here again. This is great. This is the greatest night of my life. And for these guys, thank you. And hey, and just because Brandon won, I set off some fireworks for you. Was that okay? Did you like the fireworks? Because we thought they were great. So thanks so much.
Virginia Senator Bill Stanley. Bill, thank you for all you do for small businesses and racing as well. And thank you for being here, my friend. Hopefully we see you at the track again soon.
You'll see me every week if I can be here. This was great.
I love to hear it. Bill, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Again, Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, who is responsible for tonight's Smart Modified Tour event. Victory Lane ceremonies have wrapped up here. I'm going to throw it back up to Joey Self. He's got the rest of the racing docket. And lastly, for those of you who want to see how this championship unfolds, October 9th, Hickory Motor Speedway. That's where we're going to settle it as Brandon Ward drives away with the trophy. We hope to see you then. If we cannot, Speed51.tv has you covered. On behalf of everybody at the Smart Modified Tour, I'm Eric Bredin. I'll throw it back over to Joey Self, who's got the rest of the night's program.
Eric, nice job, my friend. Thank you so much. And again, we congratulate Brandon Ward, picking up the win tonight in the Smart Modified division here at Mile Speedway. Still 2 races to go tonight. It'll be the second of each twin. We've got the Sportsman up first, Limited Sportsman out here, and then